All right, guys, so thank you so much for coming. Mr. Thomas, thank you for letting us use the facility. Really nice one, appreciate it. I'll do the guests who showed up today. We've got a number of things that are going to be on here. We're looking to try to get it wrapped up by 12 o'clock. If you don't have any issue with that. Basically, these come down to review from previous projects that we actually have initiated to make sure that they're all online, and then basically taking our school board as far as the functions of it and how we do work, and just kind of solidifying that into a plan. So meaning that we're going to talk today about how we want the budgets to look, how we want our calendars to look, and how that looks as far as in the future, how we can utilize a little bit more organization on the board. And then at the end, we have Lee that requested some time to go over what they're doing right now, so that if anybody has any questions, they can ask it. And that they came and presented earlier this week, that I thought that they would need to present to the rest of you guys before they move forward with some of the stuff. So if you have paid something, you can tell them about it.
Are they here, like physically here, or are they?
There's one of them's coming here,
Okay.
and then there's two of them online, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure which one's which.
Okay.
All right, so the first topic that we have is, we had some review from, the first initial offsite that we had. We all said that we had some projects that we wanted to work on. John, you could talk about a reading project. Ms. Wright, you could talk about your calendar, right? Chief, you talked about administrative, things, and Dr. Rendell and I worked for the last couple of weeks to make sure that those were up to speed and had a list of them and everything else. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rendell real quick. I'm just going to go through them. If you guys have any questions, just to make sure we're on pace and we can discuss them. So, Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I'm going to do is just run through some of the initiatives that each of the board members brought up at the last offsite and where we're at with those. So I'll start with Mrs. Wright. She wanted to make sure that we were on target to launch Open Gate at all middle schools next year. We are on target for that. We actually worked on purchase orders to order the new units for all the middle schools, and we will roll that out in a phase. Rollout like we did with the high school. High school, we did one at a time over a period of 7 months. We'll actually do 2 at a time. It'll be shorter time frame, but all set to do that. We'll have training for the middle school principals at the next principals meeting, but then also training as we get over the next school year with the staff that will actually be manning the station. So on target for that. As Mr. Season mentioned, Mrs. Wright has talked about a modified calendar. And so we have a survey that we're going to issue to the staff at Challenger 7. We believe staff are a good barometer as to the advantages and disadvantages of the modified calendar. So after we get the results of that survey, then we can use that information to develop some other materials that could be like another survey to the staff, the rest of our schools, to see if they're interested. And also to talk about surveying the community as a whole.
Dr. Doug, can I just real fast interject? One of the hurdles with the modified calendar that we had faced for the district was the legislation that it ties our hands on when we can start school with the August 10th school start date. But one of the possible ways to be exempt from that was being a district of academic excellence, if I'm understanding correctly. So there's a process to apply for that, for our district to do so, and that takes place during the summertime.
Yeah.
When that window opens up, can I just please, that be a priority for our district to go ahead and apply for that? We should already be doing it because we've achieved the A for the past 2 years, but that is a way that we could possibly work around if legislation doesn't change.
Yeah, we already plan on taking that.
Thank you.
So we're good.
Okay, thank you.
We're good on that.
And Dr. Rendell, just so everybody understands, we're not talking about a modified calendar for any elementary school or anything for next year.
No.
We're in the process of doing that.
Exploring, right?
One of the questions I had is that we're going to survey the staff at the school. Would we be interested in possibly putting together a survey to the parents of that school?
Yeah, we want to see what the staff has to say, is like, what are the advantages they see from a pedagogical standpoint, instruction, that kind of thing. So, staff were very interested in returning to the modified calendar, so they had experience, a lot of them had experience with it in the past. So, I want to hear from them what the advantages are.
I think it would be good to open up to the families as well, because we saw several families, and I say several, I think we lost maybe 30 or 40 families that went to different schools still in Fort St. John feeder chain there, but they ended up coming back
Right.
after the fact, and they raved about it, but it took them a minute to realize that this calendar is not what they thought it was. So when they came back, they were very, very pleased with it. So I would say I agree with starting with staff, but board, if you're okay with it, why not survey the families as well? Because that feedback is gonna be imperative if we move anything forward.
Well, I mean, I kind of feel like if the families weren't happy with it, they wouldn't stay because they have the option to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see the academic data when we come back at the end of this year because the whole situation would be more compelling if we saw results better than what we saw and we haven't seen significantly improved results or improved results at all. So again, just 1 year, so it's not worth, it's hard to make a judgment there, but after we get the academic data this year, because I feel like if we're gonna make such a huge adjustment, it would be, since academics are our focus, it would be good to have compelling data.
Agreed. 100%. I have expressed this frustration with the leadership at the school specifically because they've had some programs that are targeted really for the students that are struggling academically, but those are the kids that are putting in the programs when we're on the intercession. So, the focus, so that's one of the frustrations. It's like, great, you're running these camps and we're having these, we're really trying to focus on bringing up the school grades, obviously, because we have more time available to capture those kids that we identify are struggling throughout the school year. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the families just refused to participate or there wasn't a heavy emphasis from the school leadership standpoint, but the kids that were involved in those were not participating to be in there. So it didn't move the needle like it was supposed to move the needle, but I'm gonna blame that somewhat to the fact that the leadership of the school didn't really heavily focus on making sure that the kids that needed the additional help were getting it. And I hate that's as nice as I can say that, but that is really what I believe the whole staff.
That literally is the only true way to see the gains inside of a modified calendar is to take those intercessions and really work into those students. Dr. Rendell, can you find out what the hurdle was there that kind of blocked that?
Yeah.
Are you gonna look at the surveys before they go out to make sure that?
I think the board as a whole, can we see the survey prior to it being issued out to all the staff?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So the next thing that Mrs. Wright talked about was looking at some numbers of the students who participate in extracurricular activities, primarily sports, to see if their attendance is higher, if their grades are higher, stuff like that. We have national statistics that show that, but Mr. Robinson is putting together a mechanism to gather all that data.
Okay.
So he is working on it.
That'd be something that in the future, they would be able to use.
Well, we would basically show, for the last 2 years, all the students who participated in sports, this was their average attendance, this was their average GPA, stuff like that, and see if that was higher than the average student overall.
It would be really easy to look for music students because those are classes they're enrolled in and that's in focus.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, their sports or activities they're involved in are not necessarily in focus as part
Right.
of that. But we can pull those co-curricular classes pretty easily.
Yeah.
The music, by far, is one of the strongest sports I think does, that anybody that's participating in music has always, good student and everything else. But, all right, that's what I'm
So that was it for Mrs. Wright. We move on to Mr. Trent. There were 3 we were working on. One, Lake County has what alternative hours high school is kind of how it was introduced to us at the school board and superintendent's conference back in December. Mr. Raymer has checked into that. He's talked to the officials in Lake County. He and Mrs. Harris are actually going to visit the school over spring break. And I don't want to necessarily downplay, but it does not appear to be much different than things we already do. But he's still going to go look at the school. It is an old school that they turned into kind of like a technical center, similar to what we're doing at Clear Lake with Bill Ted. And so the students can come there for part of the day to do their academics and also part of the day to do some technical training. But it's not what we thought it was.
So we're looking at like a high school and saying we're gonna run a high school from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. I'm just throwing numbers out there.
Correct.
That's kind of what we thought.
That's
It
kind
was
of
a
what we
nice
thought.
school.
That's kind of what we thought.
Right, but it's not looking like it's that.
It does not appear to be that.
Okay.
So Mr. Raymer is going to go and
Is there any county in the state, I mean, that has something where there's just different hours?
I don't know.
We used to have Whispering Hills, which was more so because I got in trouble, obviously,
Well,
than
In Martin County, when I was working in Central County, Martin County's right next door, and one of the things they did is they had adult ed diploma program, not GED, at their high schools at night. And once you're 16, you can withdraw from regular enrollment and go to that.
Right.
Which
So
we have
that's
that, but
similar.
not at our high schools.
Yeah,
have
we
good-
we already have that, but we don't have it at every high school. They do in Martin County, and
Okay,
I don't know that we need that.
okay.
See the need for that, so, yeah, but, he's gonna go look at the alternate high school, but Mr. Trent wanted us to go look at, so he's gonna, look at that. One of the other things that Mr. Trent asked us to look into was, a different type of dean position, one that didn't necessarily require a master's in leadership. So we have worked up that job description, it'll be on one of the future board agendas for you guys to approve. We will give schools, if they have an opening to secondary schools, if they have an opening for a 10-month assistant principal, and they want you to utilize this position instead, we'll give them an option. You know, so it could be someone who hasn't finished their leadership degree that's on their way to that, so they can get in the position sooner, or it can be someone that doesn't want to pursue an leadership degree, but the principal and leadership team think would be a good fit for a dean's type position. So we'll have the job description and it'll be on future board agenda for you guys.
How long has that been that way in Brevard County? Because I feel like it wasn't always that way, that dean positions were part of ed
Well,
leadership and moving towards.
Since 96 at least, but that's when I
Really?
was a dean, and it was an assistant principal position, had to have a leadership, had to, have your certification, so.
It's more of a practice of what they call them, because schools call them more
Yeah.
deans, but they've always been assistant principals, I don't.
Correct, and
Hmm.
again, when I worked in St. Lucie County, the dean was a teacher on assignment. It was not he didn't require leadership.
Okay.
So it's not uncommon, we just provide that, use that model. So it would be another option for filling a position that is pretty impactful in a school, and, it could be that there's a coach or something that really has the skill set, to be a good role model for kids and be in a different position than teaching in the classroom, and so just means more teacher evaluations for the other administrators. This person would not be licensed to be teacher evaluated. But the board might remember that, 2 years ago, with negotiations with the union, we, worked out where experienced teachers who have highly effective evaluations over the last certain number of years, they don't need classroom observation, we still have to do an evaluation, but, so the number of times administrators have to be in the classroom to observe has been reduced. So it could be a trade-off. If you want to add this position instead of an administrator with a license, position, then you're going to have as principal or assistant principal more observations, but again, we reduce the number of observations. So
So it just widens the,
yeah,
options.
widens the pool for sure. And again, I see it more as someone who maybe hasn't finished their leadership yet, or wants to try it out, see if they want to spend the money to get a master's. So it's just another tool in the toolbox.
So the job description you're talking about won't necessarily require a master's degree?
Correct.
Okay.
And again, it's gonna come before the board to be approved anyway. And then the last thing he mentioned was, more training for our deans and other assistant principals, especially like elementary assistant principals. They don't necessarily get dean training, but they're typically the one doing one at elementary school, so more training, just to make sure that, they understand, how to enforce code of conduct and that kind of thing, and how to handle different situations. So we've already added more training this year, and, we have, a full day of training in August when they return. That was a half day before, so increase the training. Mr. Thomas, a couple things, security, he, talked about some more, deep training on security issues, especially, security issues like when there are weapons involved and stuff like that. So we've already worked with the Sheriff's Department, we've already increased some of the training. For example, the training that the, administrators will receive next month at the LTM. The system and how to handle situations when, you know, the open gate light goes off, that kind of thing. You know, it's, having the open gate at our high schools has proven to be effective. We have secured weapons each of this year and last year, and we just want to make sure our staff know what to do in those situations. You know, we did the initial training a year and a half ago, and some of the people manning those stations were not in the initial training, and so we need to make sure. You know, so we're doing that.
Thank you for that, appreciate that.
Talked about having volunteers be trained to go in and read to elementary school kids, and he had recruited a cadre of retired teachers and other volunteers for some schools in his area. So they received training. Mrs. Harris's crew has developed a standard training, so we offer it periodically every quarter to volunteers to come in and read. So this is now a structured training program. Really, after we did the training with Mr. Thomas's group, we decided this is something we'll do quarterly, so all of the elementary schools are given that information to share with their PTOs. So if they have parents or volunteers that want to actually be trained in how to come in and help kids with literacy skills, we have that in place. One thing he mentioned that we really haven't worked on is utilizing some of our open space at schools to do some CPE type of partnerships with local industry, really trying to see that really would only be appropriate at the middle or high school level. And most of our high schools don't have a lot of empty space. Even the ones that are under-enrolled, they've used almost all those spaces. So we're still looking at it. Just not sure when something like that would come into fruition. And then Mrs. Campbell, and it wasn't just Mrs. Campbell, I think, but there's been discussion about our elementary assistant principals are on a 10-month contract. And we typically require a lot of them to help over the summer, run summer school. So they end up getting paid a stipend to come in and help. So we've developed an 11-month contract for assistant principals. If we were to put all of our assistant principals on 11-month contract, that would cost $500,000. So
not yet.
So what is the stipend, what are we paying out currently? That's the one you're
only
paying.
about 150 to 175,000. Because not all of them run summer school, so not all of them is and the amount is less than putting them on full 11-month contract. So when we do one of our budget presentations later this spring, we'll show you exactly the cost and what that, you know. So is it worth doing kind of thing? And so we'll bring that back as a separate topic. Talk about budget.
A lot more than I.
Yeah, it's a lot more than we thought it was. But,
Oh, 1 month, and we're talking a total of like 50, 67 assistant principals.
the fringe and everything, that's up.
That's with, like,
And there's more than 56 because some of our large elementary schools have 2 10 months.
right, but we were only talking about
Talked about only having one.
doing one,
Yep.
right? So even with, does that $500,000 include subtracting out what we were already paying?
Yep, that was the net cost.
And that cost.
Yep. We'll show it to you, spreadsheet.
Wow.
This may not be the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're doing all the things we're doing, yeah, I mean, it's a need, but
It
Timing
is,
is
because, you know,
bad.
we scramble to cover summer school, especially when we want to take the principals and be training with them during that time, there's no one there during summer school. So, on her list was to modify the falls evaluation, modify rework, falls evaluation, so I'm not really involved in that.
You're all set.
Okay.
I've got, I gotta get them all converted and get back to the video to watch to see, make sure I have everything.
Okay.
so you're doing it?
I'm redlining it in and working with Mr. Susan too.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've been working on it to make sure that whatever the conversations that everybody had is inside of it.
Yeah.
And then they'll bring it to each one of you when it's complete, so that you guys can take a look at it. Yep. And there's nothing in there that is there's not a headache on either Paul's side or our side with anything. that we've done so far.
No, I'm excited about this, honestly, it'll be cleaner for us as far as we do for any board, for that matter, on how we evaluate that.
Yep, he felt very comfortable with everything that we had mentioned, and there were no issues there. Thank you.
And then, Mrs. Campbell talked about AI and us working on the AI policy, so Mr. Cheatham's crew is deep in that. They're looking at it from two different lenses, teacher use of AI and staff use of AI. So, you can see something on that.
Any ideas to what the product will be that comes back to us? I mean, and we talked about things that not necessarily policy, but guide, framework, right?
Yeah, so what we really are looking at is policy for staff and training and information for students and families. So more like an awareness about AI for families and students, like this is what good uses of AI, not so good uses of AI, these are things to look out for when you're using AI. These things you can't do to turn it, have to write a paper, kind of thing, and then but for staff, appropriate use of AI, which is well.
Yeah, I know they're working on it so much, appreciate that. I just feel like, AI is one of those things that came on so fast that anything we do, we're already behind. And if we have people who are using it, and talking to the staff and people who are afraid to use it because they don't want to get in trouble. I mean, some really helpful tools out there, and then maybe people who are using it and not all the best ways.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that work, and I probably is good time they're working on it along in this time frame, because I think there's gonna be something coming out of the legislature, once the governor signs it, that will also probably help shape what we do with that. What I saw in the last couple of days was a report that one of the bills, I think it's already passed, both houses, is to mandate some AI training
Correct.
at the high school level.
Secondary, I believe.
Yeah, secondary level, so that our students know how to use it, and it's worked into some literacy, it looks like AI literacy type, requirement. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, so, Mr. Cheatham's working with, the State Association of Education IT people, I can't think of the name of it, but.
It's
yeah,
like the
it's-
Florida AI Task Force or something.
Well, that's, whatever his, state association, they're working on that.
Okay.
And part of it is they wanna see what happens with that legislation before they create something that then they have to change. So, but the whole, I won't say the whole state, but the association that he belongs to, it's on there. It's like the front thing that they're looking at, or so that they can. Mrs. Campbell also asked us to look at, the fine arts director position to see if we could upgrade that and take care of that. And then, looking at our consulting agreement, and we'll probably put that out for RFP, this summer.
So with that, we wanted to move on to the website and email portion. As you guys know, they've developed the websites and the emails for us. I took and on the websites you guys, has everybody been able to go, as Campbell, you had suggested that you may not be interested in it. But has everybody had a chance to go and look at, see what they may have on their website? It's all basically the same stuff. It's all a stock picture with a pie on it.
Yeah.
Nothing special.
It doesn't look all that, I mean, it does look good though, because it's taking through multiple pictures, and it seems like the pictures are focused more so on what that woman would have been Adam and that.
And the section that says, like, I think in the news or something like that, actually has your, area's news inside of it, so that you could utilize that for your Facebook and stuff like that. But were there any questions on the website?
I just think it was great as far as being placed on the homepage of this, the district. It was much easier to find for people trying to find.
You guys have your own tab now.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've caught up in the world, so just much easier to find, I think, and that's great. And the mapping and knowing what schools are in what district, it's just so much cleaner.
Yeah.
So we all feel pretty comfortable about it, no issues there.
Now all your people aren't calling me anymore.
Well, there's a little bit because we restructured, you know what I mean? But the other thing is that the email, just so you guys know, some of the city expressed that we may want to send out an email to our schools, teachers, whatever it is, and they developed headers. So kind of like Mayfield has their Mayfield Minute and all these other people, you can go in there and they will just develop your background with a picture on it, real simple stuff. And then that way, if you ever wanted to send out something to your people like welcome to school or whatever, you can do that. And that's inside there. So if you have not had a chance to look at that, please do.
Where is that?
If you go in, Ms. Williams is actually working on that with GCR. So if you go in and you just say had, and here's what I'm looking for, they'll develop that. And then you just ask GCR, these are the people that I would like to send, it out to. So once we develop that header and you guys are interested, they'll build out like, okay, if you want to send an email to all your parents, to all your, to teachers, whoever's inside your district, you can start disseminating how to do that.
I will appreciate that, because there's times where we get like scholarship opportunities or different events that are happening and they're targeted towards elementary or towards middle or towards high school, and I'm like, oh, going through my list in my head of all my principals and there, so it'll make life a little easier if it were something that created that group like that.
Yeah, and I think that the idea is that we have great things that we want to let parents know, and you know that a lot of the issues are that they put one of these in Johnny's backpack and it goes home, and sometimes Johnny doesn't really give it to the parents or it doesn't get there, but it's just a way of covering more information to them on a basis. So, if you have any questions, go to that, Swin is in charge of it. Any questions so far? Good. All right, moving on.
I just have to add in there, as conversations we've had before, that with great power comes great responsibility. So if we have the ability to communicate outside of district channels, we should be even more cognizant of the fact of what our words mean. And, and just use those things judiciously.
Sure.
That would be my request.
Good. All right.
Did we skip over district project? What was that?
I'm gonna bring that up down here at the bottom, so it's kind of outside of, I'm gonna bring it up down at the bottom. All right, so we go to budget reviews. Many of you guys know that, we've spoken in the last offsite about kind of structuring our budgets. Many of you may not have seen a school budget before. I look at them every once in a while. Basically, each one of your schools has their own budget. They have their own expenditure list. They have all of those components. So what I'm doing is working with finance to develop you so that you will receive twice a year your school budgets so that you can review all of them. And that's going to be to where you can see this is what they did over the summer. This is the expenditures. This is where they spent money for capital. Here's where they have reserves, everything. So, for instance, I had one of our schools, Ms. Campbell will tell you the story. We were given $180,000, I think, of capital each, or there was a specific amount of money that we were given, right? And they said, okay, each one of the board members has this much money to go spend. So this one year we went out because it was a big thing that ABZ was fighting for, and we were able to get specific allocation of capital dollars to help support our schools however we wanted. So we went to all schools. One of the schools, and I won't particularly name the name, the PE teacher came out and said, we needed our basketball court needed to be resurfaced for years, it's falling apart. Is this something that you might be able to allocate? So I went to the principal and I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Would you appreciate it? She goes, oh yeah. She goes, we just don't have any money. We don't have any money, blah, blah, blah. And then, so I allocated a specific portion of that to take care of it. It was like $8,000 or $9,000, right? Resurface it, cleaned it all up, everything else. And then all of a sudden, Dr. Mullins at the time decides at the end of the year that he's going to scrub all of their reserves. And come to find out, the school that I had done that with had in reserves $20,000. And they were forced to spend it, so they built an entire playground and all kinds of stuff. So what it means is that sometimes we're hearing one thing and we may be seeing another. Does that make sense? Plus, it just creates the transparency that is needed out there. Any questions on the school budget? It'll be twice a year, and that's what we'll talk about process management, about dates and stuff like that. And then the other thing is that the district department budgets, each one of us receives kind of a overview at the end of the year saying, here's what it is, and this is how it's compared to last year and everything. But we don't receive, inside of that document, we do receive a portion of their budget, but we don't receive what the expenditures were, and some of the deep dive on them. So what we're doing is just like we talked about school budgets, twice a year you'll receive district departmental budgets that are going to be so that you can review any of the expenditures, you can review how much they have in reserve, you can review things, and then have those conversations that say, hey, you've got $100,000 in this budget, what's going on? And a lot of times they're saving it for something that they're buying the next year. So a lot of times the budgets roll over, stuff like that, but it gets us to a place where we understand a deep dive as far as each one of their budgets, rather than whatever they bring to the board. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, I'm gonna open Pandora's box on budget, but I'll let you finish.
Yeah, and then let me say something about Suzanne and then open Pandora's box.
Okay.
Because there's something that she came to me 3 days ago and kind of changed a lot of what we're talking about here. And then the district budget, what I'm going to do is once Suzanne, the component that she talks about, that I'll say in a second, is finished, we receive a district budget at the end of every year, right? That big old fat thing. sometimes it does not line up, the numbers might line up, but how it lines up, if you don't know how to read it to the capper, which is what they report to the state, which is very easy, it's like 22 pages or something like that. Sometimes those line up, and it's not anybody's fault, it's just because this is the document that we've had and we've been doing forever. If you guys know what I'm talking about, it's the one that has like all of our pictures in it, all of our bios in it, it talks about what Brevard is, it gives a large overview, so it's like,
It's the CAFR, it's
Yeah.
the popular annual financial report.
Well, I think he's talking about the CAFR, which is the.
Right, he's saying the CAFR,
regular,
CAFR don't
right.
match.
anyway, so what's happening is the one that we see at our board meeting, that we have copies of, that I have inside the office, a 100 and something page document, and then the actual one that you go to the state website and look at, you know what I mean, sometimes they don't. So what I'd like to do is, bring this back to to one of our workshops where we say, okay, is this what you guys see as far as what you want that document to look like? Because it might be that we want to line it up a little bit different so it's more transparent, that's all. And if we don't, we don't, but that was the district budget, that's where it was. And then, so anyway, so we've been working on this stuff, asking them to put together these examples and all that stuff, and then Sue called me 2 days ago and said, we were talking, and she says, you know, I'm restructuring everything. So Sue is actually gonna be doing all of what I just said, school budgets, district budgets, and the departmental budgets. She's gonna be presenting to us, every other school board meeting is what she would like to do. And I've asked her to, if that's the case, since today I was gonna put this in place as far as talk to you guys and make sure that we're moving in the right direction, if she could bring that possibly to one of the next couple of workshops when she's got paid. What she would like to do is present not only kind of what we received as far as those amendments, but a little bit more direction and things like that inside of our finances. Does that make sense? She's restructuring the finance department, and I had been working on this for 2 months, and then all of a sudden, she takes over finance. So and I felt completely comfortable with letting her take this portion. But the idea is that we would like to be able to grab a school budget and say, I want to take a look at this school budget and have that ability. Grab the department budget, have that ability, and then 2 times a year review.
I think one of the nuances that I find, and I'm speaking for myself only, and I don't know what everybody else sees, but a lot of times when you're looking for something in a budget, it might be like an exorbitant, I don't know, training that took place and it was in California and it cost the district $50,000. I don't know, I'm just throwing out an example here. It doesn't, the budget isn't necessarily gonna tell you that, you know, all it's gonna say is like a travel, continuing education, it'll lump it into a strand, but it doesn't give you what the actual money is spent on. And so, I think that's a great starting place, yes, but I don't think it's gonna answer a lot of the questions. I think it's still gonna end up that you're gonna have to dig deeper to find out what it is that you're concerned about, or that you know, somebody has brought to your awareness that you have an issue with.
So what you're saying, I agree with. So what she's saying is that there's a conference that everybody goes to from a specific school. That would be,
I think we all understood what she was saying.
and that would be reflected into the budget that they have.
It'll just go to strand, it's just gonna go for continuing education, or it's gonna go for whatever the case is, so it's not gonna show.
We do have that.
Hang on, it'll say exactly the actual expenditure, the total amount. It won't, you're not gonna just see just the actual budgetary, like, bucket. You'll
Okay.
see a breakdown of all of those. So it won't be that you just see one thing and it's $50,000, it'll be, you know.
We actually already have access to something more specific. If you're checking on those, we get once a month-ish from procurement, we get the report that we asked for, that was anything under
The director, the superintendent.
the
right?
superintendent. And that is schools or departments, so if a school rents a venue for prom and they spend over $5,000, I mean, you know, I'm
Right.
picking something, it actually says this school is the vendor, you know, or if we hired a musician, somebody to come in, a clinician or whatever, coming, you know, anything like that, that's on there specific, which I think would get to, like if it was a training, it gives more specifics when you look at that. So,
It does, but there's.
and it'll tell which school.
Yeah, it does, and I appreciate those that come through every month, I'll get those, but, one of the things I think, you know, right now, when we're talking about budget constraints, and that's obviously a big area of conversation for pretty much everybody in the state of Florida, I think it'd be wise for our district to take a strong stance on saying, hey, no more travel outside the state of Florida. If you're gonna do any kind of continuing education, you're gonna stay here in Florida, you're not gonna go elsewhere, because those trips get very, very expensive when we're talking about airfare and hotel and conference expenses, and I know that may not sound very fun or popular, and people might get upset about that, but if you don't have money, you don't go travel, you stay where you're at, and so we need to find a way to bring that resource here and, figure out online training. That's my personal opinion on that. I don't know where the board will land on that, but that's,
No more Rock Park.
I know, I understand that, believe me, I understand that.
Across the state, there are many districts that locked down travel recently. And, Dr. Mandel did a great job of pulling our summit at the end of the year to make sure that that happens here locally and stuff like that. A lot of that was moving outside, so.
I understand instead of making a blanket policy, obviously the superintendent controls the day-to-day expenditures of the budget, and so him knowing that we're trying to cut back, he obviously is leading the charge on that. I would just hate to tie the district's hands and say that we're not doing it, making a blanket policy, we're not doing something to come up that is beneficial.
But right now, you'll be able to.
Or maybe that the board has to approve it if it's up, I don't know, I'm just.
We already do, don't we? I mean, don't we already approve out-of-state travel? Or
For students, not for staff. And so, again, I know I'm keeping more talk to this one, but I'm just saying, and right now, I'm sure there's things that are lined up for this summer, so maybe this is something moving forward, that we say, hey, starting next school year, we stay in the state, we're working on tightening down every expenditure we possibly have. That's one that we have identified that is expensive, costs the district some substantial money, and so we wanna see that we're being good stewards there. I don't know what the board thought of that.
So we had that conversation last summer, heading into this, actually last spring, heading into this current budget year. And so we reduced travel costs by, I believe, 20% last summer.
What was the total overall travel cost? Okay, I think that's probably worth the board knowing what is the total expenses for travel district-wide, because that's gonna be a number that would probably, it's gonna
It's
be.
a lot smaller than you think.
Okay. All right, well, I'm curious to know what that number is, and maybe if it is, then, okay, so we continue on. My thought process is if we're saying that we don't have money for all these things, then we're spending it, it's easy. And the other one that Pandora's box I kind of started with at the last board meeting, unbeknownst to me, was our school board member budgets that we received, which I believe, Lena's $7,500, is that correct, for each member?
This year,
This year, $7,500, right, and so,
because memberships went up.
right, because memberships to FSBA for each one that's sitting here is over $5,000 per person to be a part of FSBA, which I've opted out of, and again, I understand why people do that, and their advocacy there, but, my frustration is when I look at the board and I say, hey, I wanna spend $200 to send 40 kids that are in ROTC to Patrick Space Force Base, and I'm getting pushback for taking it out of that money, and going, wait a minute, that seems absolutely asinine to me. And the union's over there going, we'll pay for it, and I'm like, oh, okay, of course, and so that's where you're just like, this is the common sense thing, so I think that there needs to be some leniency there. Now, I'm not even saying the board, it can come before the board to approve it, but the board as a whole should look at that and go, that makes perfectly good sense. It's student-based, it's sending kids somewhere right here in Brevard County, using our own resources, and you're not spending that money by being a part of FSBA, why not spend $200 on that, so.
I think we're gonna talk about that on the first.
Okay, all right, well, I'm voicing my frustration with that one, because that one chaps me beyond the belief. I'm going, this is crazy, this is 100% focused towards students and their education, and that should be the number one priority. Academics should be the number one priority, so. Board, I'm just asking you to look at that, and talk about that, think about that long and hard. If you're not spending the money elsewhere on a membership to something, or maybe evaluating what is the membership costing the district. I mean, how much are you receiving from that membership? Those are things that you have to weigh into when we are part of something, so.
Well, on that topic, I mean, we're gonna have a conversation a bit later about where we put it on the topic of FSBA. There's more than just the weekly emails that we're getting. FSBA, and I'll give you one of the examples is, through our membership in FSBA, we have advocacy, we have lobbyists that are, and this board did not put together a platform this year. We had a couple of requests. We made platform suggestions to FSBA's platform. We made a couple of suggestions to the consortium's platform. We did not put together a platform, but on our behalf, there were multiple people who work for FSBA that were working on our behalf on all these bills that are coming down and on the state budgets and things like that. So and we have used in the past, we've used them for our superintendent search.
But we paid them for that, that wasn't a free service.
Right, I just kind of because this is gonna be short, I'm gonna be done. But there's a whole lot more of that, so, and the choice to be a member, not be a member, we've opened it up so that if you wanted to join another association, that's fine. We can have the conversation later about what kind of freedom we have in it, but I have to say, whatever we don't use in that membership budget absolutely can be student focused, because if we don't use money, just like any other department that doesn't use their money at the end of the year, and it gets put, it gets moved into next year's budget or it's rollover, that is money that we can use for one-time student expenditures, we can use for, bonuses, we can use for whatever we need. It is not a matter of we can have the freedom to do these little one-off projects, or we can focus, and that's student focused, but if we don't do that, then we're not student focused. I don't accept that as an argument. So again, not wanting to go into that much, but the idea of being a part of FSBA, part of being a good board member is making you better able to serve students. And there's a lot of wisdom that I know personally I've gained over the last 8 years, 7.5, from being part of that association, being able to reach out to people at any point in time and say, hey, we got this going on in Brevard, help. How do I handle this situation? And I always get a phone call back from the people who are on staff who we are paying through our dues, or fellow board members. There's just a lot outside of conferences and things like that. There's year-round things that help people be a better board member that honestly, I think if people took more advantage of that, they'd be even better board members. So I'm just
Yeah,
gonna have to let that.
Ms. Campbell, thank you for the overview on FSBA. I don't think Ms. Wright was saying that we shouldn't be members of FSBA. I think her point was that she has allocations of money that she would like to put towards some of her other items, and I think that we have that conversation on the 31st.
And that's fine, we can save it for them. The leniency there on, and I membership, but this isn't a knock to FSBA. My biggest knock to FSBA is the expense that it costs the school district. That's my biggest issue with them. It costs a lot of money for each one of us to sit there. And while you utilize it and you take advantage of it, and I'm glad that you do, I don't think that can be said true for everybody that sits on the boards, whether it's here or around the state of Florida. So you go, okay, is that the best and highest, is that highest and best use of the expense? I don't know. Is it? I don't know. And not to mention, like you said, we did, yes, we had them for our, one hiring of our superintendent. We paid them an expense for that. That wasn't a free service that they provided. And as far as the lobbyists go, we were paying lobbyists also. So you're like, okay, we're doing things else. So I'm just saying, if we're looking at this in a true nature of where can we save money, that's one area where I felt confident saying, I'm okay with saying I will not spend the money there. But at the same sense, if you want to take those $200 and spend it towards, and trust me, next time I'm like, I will just find someone that will happily write that check and I will not bring it up if that's the direction of the board. But I think that it's a conversation that needs to be hammered out.
Just so the board knows, on top of the way that it used to work was on top of being able to utilize your funds for things like that before. Also, Ms. Escovich did not use the healthcare system that we had.
I don't use the healthcare system either.
So what they did was they allocated the amount of money, because when you go to the true board budget, it breaks it down by how much your salary is, how much your healthcare is, how much of this $9 million that we're speaking of is, and even that workers' comp in it, which I had to remove because we can't even qualify for workers' comp. It's not like you can't perform your duties you're going to do. You know what I mean? So those were the buckets before.
Yeah.
And what she had successfully done, Ms. Escovich, was said, hey, look, like I don't spend healthcare. So because I don't do that, can you add that to my pile? And she did. And then she did what you're talking about, which was go outside. So,
I actually talked to her a couple of days ago because I wanted to ask about the conversation regarding the money, which was one-time funds that came from, I just put this out there because we need some historical perspective. It was one-time funds. I believe it was around the time we were losing those federal funds. The kids have to fill out the forms that say we have federal property, and that Altman thought, and I know Andy Ziegler had a big part of that, trying to fight for getting that back. And so we got that back, we were getting that money, but the budget, it's my understanding, and I was also going to talk to Mr. Belford to see, because I haven't been able to talk to her yet, that it was one-time funds because we got those federal funds, but the budget had already been set. And so they divvied it up among the board members to do mostly capital projects. And so that, again, that was a one-time thing. It wasn't a recurring, every year the board members get to use this money for, their pet project fund.
we were able to use it for pet project funds. It was 1 year. That's what I stated. I said 1 year in the past because it was absolutely, and it was tied to that. I think it. But anyways, we'll have that discussion on 31st. Everybody, moving on. One of the things, we moved into process discussion, one of the things we have is committee reports. So right now, we all attend committees, right? And request the documentation to send to this board, saying, hey, here's what was at the League of Cities meeting, and stuff like that. I think that, we all go there and we all kind of know some of the things, but I would like to start a formal process of, if we attended a meeting that we regularly are appointed for, and then we go ahead and at the end of that meeting, we receive a presentation or something like that, that we can share that with the board. So it's really easy, I think we can get to that.
It's actually labeled board report, so you're asking us, so do you want us to do in the board meetings, like I say, you know, when we have our recognitions and board reports, or would you rather just like send out an
No,
email?
I think you send out an email saying, hey, I just attended this, and then on the board reports, the next part that we're gonna talk about is our reports, we actually say those. So if Ms. Lena knows that you were attending because she has all of our calendars, that she might add that to the board reports, if you know to give that update, that's all. Just more of a formal process, just, you know, that we're tightening up what we're doing. The next thing is that inside of your agenda, you have under materials, kind of an overview, if you have inside of there. This is something that Dr. Adele has been doing, but again, I'm just trying to formalize it. Everything that we talk about right now is actually okay with what we're speaking about. I'm gonna formalize it into a document that says these are the processes by which we'll kind of go. So this is our agenda timeline, and it just goes through exactly how we do it already. But when Tuesday is 14 days out, it's due to the board, and then that Friday, 11 days out, you guys can get an email reminder the Friday before that says, hey, if there's anything that you guys wish to pull, if there's anything that you guys wish to discuss or anything like that, please take a look. A reminder email will come out the Friday or 11 days out, and then the Monday, which is 8 days before, which is usually when we have our one-on-one sessions after you talk to Dr. Rendell. If there's something that you would formally like to pull off the board, you could signify that by then. Meaning that if you have any opportunity, there's I've reviewed, I've spoken to Dr. Rendell, and now I'm gonna pull it off the agenda. That's everything we already do. There's not a single thing that we're not doing, it's just, I want to formalize it, put it down so that we have it in some sort of document. And then the next day, it gets published to the agenda to the public. And then that Friday, what I've asked is, when I receive the agenda 7 days out, I've asked to not add anything to the agenda to throw you guys off. But instead, on that Friday, an email will go from Lena out to the board of any of the additions that they have. You'll look at those and tell us if there's any of them that you object to. And if I could get those objections by Monday evening after you've met with Dr. Rendell, that's perfect.
Sorry, just real fast, this is saying on Friday, just the administrative recommendations.
No, it's that's being sent to the board, but any other changes to the agenda, additions or subtractions, will go to you guys on Friday.
You're saying this is gonna be, you're proposing this is gonna be the policy? So like the other day, I pulled something that I wasn't planning on pulling in, like something came up within this 8-day window that I wanted to pull something, will we not have that flexibility?
Get all that flexibility in the world. All I'm trying to do is kind of organize it. So what happens is when it comes to my agenda on that Tuesday, you have every right to pull it. Like you can immediately go ahead and say, hey, I want to pull this, I want to do it. What we're doing is creating a time period because during that time, sometimes, not all the time, very rarely, staff is adding things to the calendar, right? So what I was saying is, for me, what ends up happening is I check it one day, I might not check it for 3 or 4 days, and then all of a sudden there's something else on there. So just saying, hey, whatever recommendations they are, let's freeze the calendar until that Friday. Lena will put it out, so that comes out on Friday, then we all look at it. We meet with Dr. Rendell one more time, and we say, hey, Doc, listen, I've got an issue here, or I like this, I'm gonna try to add it, whatever that is. And then right after that, we successfully knock out whatever it is. So if there's something that 3 board members or Dr. Rendell says, hey, I don't want this on the board agenda, then we'll pull it before it comes and we'll have that for discussion at a later date. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
When you say pull, I think you're talking about pulling it off the agenda as a whole, not the same as what you're talking about, which is pulling it from the consent into a separate vote.
Oh, right, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, that comes,
Okay.
no, absolutely.
I have a
Good
Lena
point.
question, are you publishing on Tuesdays or Wednesdays?
She does it Tuesday night.
Most of the times I try to get it done on Tuesday night, but
Okay, because Wednesday
sometimes you're
technically is
waiting
7
for a document.
Right.
And so when I get to work on a Wednesday morning, which is usually 6:30, 6:45, I'll post right then, and I'll have that document.
Because that's technically 7 days out. I just the flexibility of.
Because we have till midnight, on the 7 days ahead of time, I'm not up till midnight, so I'm not waiting for that document till midnight.
But with all that said, she should no longer have to wait until midnight on Tuesday for anybody making decisions. We should be able to meet with Dr. Rendell, make those decisions. She should have all day Tuesday to publish it, and we have a formal process. That's it. I think that's
I'd love to hear if Dr. Rendell has any thoughts about it. I'm fine with this. I very much would appreciate the email because when we had, what do we have before, Agenda Plus, we would at least get which item was updated, but we also would get this is what was added, deleted, and the new software, there's a lot of benefits to it, but it doesn't tell me what's changed, when it changed, so, because I only wanted to go back and see the things that was different.
That's right.
I didn't want to see the whole thing again, so anything that was updated since the last, that would be, yes, absolutely, that would be very much appreciated.
And just so you guys know, this is what we technically do already, but with a little bit more organization.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden we find that there's something that's amiss about it, and we're like, hey, we need to change it, then we change it. It's not that this is all of a sudden going to be the law, but it's just good to start right, you know what I mean? Are you okay with this, Mr. President?
Oh, yeah, no, I love this, I think this is
Good. Perfect.
Any problems?
No, I think, I just want to clarify what, Lena mentioned, that sometimes she's waiting on a document. So not necessarily waiting on board feedback, but waiting on a document or something to be added, late Tuesday. And so she gets it late Tuesday, and it's after she left for work or home, and she'll do it.
Right.
Those are fine. Those don't matter. That's just the.
Wednesday mornings.
Yep, yep. Okay, so we went through the agenda process. So one of the things that we talked about is right now, that we're working on updating the procurement process. And I think, Mr. Thomas, you've had some input into that. I made some input into it, not that this is for formal discussion or anything like that. We'll bring it back and we can talk through it. But, and I would like to do anything over $1 million, has to be, looked at. So one of the problems we have, and this is, again, me just suggesting this will bring it back at a later date, is that before our healthcare and on our property, the consultant that oversaw the actual stuff was the one that did the RFPs. The problem with that is that the consultant would make commissions on a back-end bonus thing for anything that they wrote, okay? So that's the healthcare piece. That is no longer because we just took that out, that's great. The other problem we had was that we were constantly getting renewals at the board meeting that was right before the annual bid. So it means that we had no chance of changing, and we wouldn't even see it until like 10 days before the actual renewal date, which means they would do that on purpose. So the healthcare, that's going, we're good there. Moving forward to the property side, 3 years ago, if you remember that really rude lady that came in from Gallagher and was speaking during the renewal, where she was kind of disrespectful and asking like why we're asking questions, I said I did not want to have the property renewal or any of these large renewals come right before the date. What do we have? Property renewal is up April 4th, April 1st, and right now we're going to have that on our agenda December or March 31st. So the idea is that I would like to in the future talk about getting those ahead of the time that it would take if we did not like that to go out to bid. And there's a reason why this property one is very important for that kind of conversation that I'll bring up at the board meeting. Just as this is where my thought was on this piece, just to guys let you know, but the procurement process, I did want to let you guys know is being worked on right now. So if you have any input, I think the conversation goes through, of course, Dr. Rendell, but then Suhan, and then they will get to Mr. Thomas.
Okay, so procurement is actually under operations under Mr. Wilson, not Sue. We actually asked RSM to add this to their current internal audit, so they're going to be auditing our procurement process. So that should yield us recommendations, if any, to change our processes. So,
But if you guys have something outside of what RSM wants, you have every right to bring it forward.
No, I agree with this. We've seen times where we're approving contracts sometimes that they're dated for, it's after the date, the contract was lapsed. And so that is not good practice at all. That doesn't, we don't need to be continuing to do that. And I think honestly, anything that comes up, there should be something within procurement that triggers a notification that says, hey, 90 days this contract comes up. It needs to be more than really 30 days, because if it has to go out for competitive bidding, that's a process and that takes time. So like 90 days should probably be the window of when a contract's coming up. What are we doing with it? Is it getting extended or renewed, or is it going back out for bid? On all fronts, I think, honestly, that's my personal opinion.
I think it would be helpful for me in this conversation, and maybe, Mr. Hines could give us a refresher, 'cause we did that workshop a couple years ago about the whole procurement process.
We actually did it less than a year ago. We'll do another one.
I don't need another workshop. I think my question specifically on the renewal part. So, because my thought is, okay, if we, and most, set the insurance question aside, but if, for most of our contracts, if we know, we set a 3-year contract and it'll have like 2 1-year renewals or something like that. If whoever the vendor is, the contract with, is doing a really good job or giving really good service, and they want to do those 2-year renewals, which they have every right to, because that's the way we set it up, and so we're just approving these renewals. I don't want to put an additional barrier in the way of us if we already know, because the known is we're getting good service. You know, we put it back out, could we possibly get a cheaper price? Maybe not, but maybe we've locked in a good price and we want to do that. So I don't want to put an extra barrier in there, but one question that I think you could answer for us is there something, do they go out, obviously not do the whole process again, but do they just kind of scope out a little bit and go, is there a possibility on those renewals, you know, in the market, is there better something out there maybe? Because I think that would make us feel better about the.
Yeah, so one of the reasons we switched to board docs, you know, now it's diligent,
Right.
is because you could then search all the other districts' board docs to see their contracts, to see if they were getting something at a cheaper price or a better deal. So Sean can do that with diligent, he still enables us to do that. We couldn't in the old system because we weren't in the system.
Right.
So now being a part of the same system that almost every district is in, then we can look at all their contracts and see if we get a better deal, including other government agencies. So, yeah, Sean did a presentation at the offsite at middle school, Brevard Middle School. I think that was about a year ago, maybe. Maybe more than a year ago. But, we can, you know, talk about just the renewal process if you want. But again, I'm very comfortable that RSM's going to dig in and look at our process. And they can tell us if there's some things we're doing inefficiently and we could do better.
When do you anticipate that they'll have completed their review?
So they'll have it done by end of the fiscal year, so July 1.
And also, our Senate is always open for you guys to contact them and go review what they're doing in the process. The one thing they don't want is to come forward with a recommendation and us go a different direction. So they've always been to contact me, this man was in this moment, and just say, hey, we'd like to discuss this. So if you would like to voice that. It's great.
Let me clarify, my request can be answered with an email.
Okay, all right, okay.
And then, in that regard, Ms. Campbell, one of the things we were speaking about with the 1-year extensions, they still should come before the board at enough time. Because, to give you an example, our former health broker was at the short-term disability come up at a different time, so that when the renewal for the accident, critical illness, and other stuff came up, they were able to give those to that specific broker. By them having the short-term disability, they were able to anchor the savings that they could offset costs for the others. It's a game that insurance agents play, right? So what I thought forward was, hey, let's line those up so that they all come out at the same time. Having that ability and knowledge before renewal pops on our desk like the time right before. So I don't think anybody disagrees with the year renewals at all. You're 100% right. They're just basic formalities, but there are some times where they might come up that we have to put eyes on it before they go out to bid, that's all. All right, moving on to the member item requests. So in the past, and Ms. Campbell will probably remember this, is we used to have a system where our member requests, we had a system built, that you would put it in, it would then take it, and then it would lock it in, and it would say, this member has requested, we all see it, and it gives timelines and stuff like that. Do you remember that document?
Yeah, there's a smart sheet that they were doing. I mean, you probably used it more than anybody else, because you would have big requests or whatever. I mean,
Okay.
fine. To me, usually if I have a request, it's an email, whoever it is, cabinet member responds to all of us, we're good.
I've not had a problem. I just wanted to bring it up as an opportunity because basically, if you notice this is all organizing what we do. And so I wanted to see if you got one. What it is it was a program that, John, if you went and typed it in, it would send an email and it would go out to the cabinet. It would have it registered as, this is what I said, in my request, basically. And you would see all the requests. Of course, yes, Mrs. Campbell, I did have more than others. But the thing is that they, eventually were checked. So it didn't fall through the cracks. I will tell you with Dr. Mandel, we've never had a situation where my stuff's fallen through the cracks. I just wanted to bring it up as an opportunity that if anybody felt like we needed to bring it up, and take a look at what we had before we can. If you guys are good with what we have.
I hate smart sheets, so I'm just
Right.
gonna say that.
It was smart sheet.
I hate smart
We also at
sheets.
the time had Tammy who kept it going, and
And
Tammy
she
was
was
a particular
forwarding them
fan
and
of smart
Listen,
sheets,
I
so.
just, yes, I just wanted to bring it up.
Smart sheet was the demise of Paul's evaluation, where we had to struggle with that, everyone was entering things, and it wasn't transferring over, oh god, that was not good.
All right, so, and then the next piece is Suhan's finance process. We already talked about that. Next up is a calendar review. So what we did was, many of you know that in some of the schools that you go to, they don't have their calendars updated, they don't have those kind of things. We hear about events, but we're not knowledgeable about them. So what I asked Ms. Lena to reach out to a handful of schools to figure out, let's try a couple of test pilots to figure out how we can get those to our calendars, right? So Ms. Lena did a really good job of checking into the different schools, and what we developed in the end is that for all forward-facing like community events, the districts would form a calendar that would sync to our calendars specific to each group. So say for instance, Matt Susan, Sun Tree Elementary, District 4 says we have a harvest festival on November 8th. They know that harvest festival, when they put it into the calendar, just needs to be added to our calendar. Very easy. It adds to our calendar and then it populates to your calendar. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
You as an individual can choose what you want on your calendar. So prior to the year, Ms. Lena would go to my 22 schools and say anything that is facing the community, an event like a award ceremony, a harvest festival, something like that, if you could just add that to the calendar.
But it's not getting published, it's just getting added to our calendars.
Yep.
Okay.
And for you, if you like, look, I know my schools, I know exactly where I need to be, you don't have to request this at all. It just gives us an opportunity to know what's going on inside of our local schools, just an opportunity. And that's specific to each one of your calendars, specific to each one of the things you do. So what the process in this would be, sometime in between now and the end of the year, we would get with Ms. Lena and say, hey, here's what I would like to see on my calendar. And then at the beginning of the year, Ms. Lena, or maybe in July or whatever, would reach out to the schools, tell them, and then they would populate that. Very easy. The next one is the school, I kind of flipped it, didn't I? School board calendar. So there's a lot of items that we do that get populated to our districts, or our sheets like 2 weeks in advance, or when they call the next meeting. So for instance, we have audit committee meetings, we have all of these different meetings that we have outside of our regular school board meetings and our things. What I would like to do is have a formal place that all of those go to also, so that would be added to that other calendar that we have, so that we have it. We all receive an email that then populates onto our calendar, if that makes sense. What I would like to do is have it formally put in by Lena when she receives it too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that we have,
Well, I mean, you think about all the events that we get invited to, and they used to, I think with Tammy was she would just stick them on the calendar, and that was just what that was. But we get invited to a lot of different things, and if it's not on the calendar, you're not checking your email, or you're doing school visits, or you're like, oh, did I get lost in the shuffle somewhere and it fell down, you
just a
know?
formal process for like all of the district-wide events that are not school-specific.
Right.
So you have your, like you have all of
Or
your
the NPA, or just those,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, no, because this year, and I've already addressed it with a couple people, there are a couple things that, like, we didn't get any information about the secondary science fairs. the elementary people send them to us, and that's like never happened before, because we've gotten those. And elementary gave us invitations to, here's the award ceremony
Yeah.
for all of them, here's where you can go to the mall and
Yeah.
see the project. And for some reason, secondary fell through the cracks, also didn't get an invite to the secondary, the superintendent's art show, found out when I got his email.
we have to break.
So, yeah, there were a couple things that fell through the cracks. But yes, you're right, and for like the all county concert, we do get an email, here, would you like tickets, but they have those dates well in advance, so you're right. If Alina could pull those, honestly, off of the L2P, because,
The way it works,
You know.
she doesn't have to
I'd
do
have
it.
to read every minute.
No.
not necessarily.
So just so you know the way it would work, is I've been working with Ms. Harris, Mr. Cheatham, and everybody else. They would have that other calendar, that their staff knows that if they have a district-wide event, that they're to put it to this, calendar, and then that would automatically populate it. We don't want Ms. Lena trying to chase down all these things.
Right.
But what she
Now, if they
can do.
include me in the invites,
Yeah.
I can put them right on the calendar.
But we want the responsibility to be on them, that if they're going to be putting it into a calendar, because I'm sure they're putting it in a calendar somewhere, that they also populate it to ours. What we would like Nina to do is go through, and at the end of the year, it's gonna be a little bit of a checklist, but I've asked each one of the department heads to put together a checklist of all of the dates that we should receive information on, and then Ms. Lena will have a checklist all the way down, and she can go through and say, oh, I don't have this one, and reach out to them, so that we have them all checked in. And this isn't just those, but it also goes to the, district calendars, so like PM1, PM2, PM3, right? We have our achievement data comes out on
Are you
certain,
talking about things that are already on the district calendar,
some of those, yep,
on the website?
that we don't. And so, for
Some of the
instance,
science fairs and things like that are on there.
Right.
Yeah.
but for instance, the other piece to it is that, we know that during PM1 will be during this week, next year, right? It's really exciting for me to try to know that that's coming out, so that we could, and this also helps GCR, because GCR, sometimes it's not notified from our departments of things that are happening. They'll know that our PM3 data is coming out. We know that our PM3 data is gonna be real good, so we can set up an entire communications plan around it. But what happens is that GCR can't get that a month ahead of time, then if they're within a week and they're trying to deal with whatever they're dealing with there, it's difficult for them to come out with something. So it will help us, but it will also help all of the other departments organize along with GCR. So now GCR will also have our calendars, so they're gonna also have the school calendars and everything else, so that they know what else is going on.
And also times when to avoid going to business school.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I thought that's where you were
That's
headed. Yeah.
Yeah.
To say stable hatred.
Right.
So the last of the calendar battle is sports, right? This is a monster. And, well.
I do not want all the sporting events on the calendar.
So completely understand. So if you take, for instance, if you said, I want my district.
Since the man only has one high school.
Yeah.
My district's 40 events, you look, and it might be a huge amount, right? So we're working through that on how to do it. The first piece is, how the heck do we put all of the events on a calendar?
We do tabs of the calendars.
You know, we're not even there yet. But Mr. Robinson said that they're already on calendars. There's a company that all of our coaches put the calendars to. So you know Max Preps, if you ever go to Max Preps, they have all of our games on there, everything's already organized. So he's looking to find a way that we might be able to have our calendars set up. Now, this piece, the sports calendar, is not only for us, but for our community. So what we want is, I hear from all of we have so many former athletes, former leaders in the community that just love to go to sports games or events like what you're talking about with music and everything else. They just would like to have something where they go and they see all of these. So that's the last piece, is developing some kind of a calendar that we may be able to go to, and the school district or the community may be able to go to, that has these events for sports and some of those larger ones that other people can attend. That is a monster, but it's doable. We just need to get through it. But I'm working
I
through it.
just can't help but think when you say all this, what would solve this is if every school stated their calendars on their websites, where this would make this the easiest way to be able to grab the information and
It's hard
impart it.
because it's usually somebody who also has a lot of other things.
I know.
But we give a stipend to
Especially
every
if
school board. So, for instance, we give a stipend to every school. force somebody to do exactly that. Now, it's so minimal that if you told somebody, here, we give you a stipend, they'd probably give it back to you, because the amount of work it takes to time, which is a.
Well, not really, though, because they should be training most of these events, like this all should schedule up, these aren't last minute things that are popping up and showing.
If it was a way, and I don't know, this may be a future conversation, but you know how in Google Calendars you can, like subscribe to a calendar?
Right.
Like my kids'
Yes.
band has a Google Calendar and you subscribe to it, and then all of a sudden, all the band events just got pulled into my Google Calendar. So we had something like that, so if I as a board member wanted all the athletic,
They're like, oh my
you
gosh,
know,
I
I could subscribe to, or subscribe to this school's calendar and that school's calendar, but it's kind of a choice. So, I mean, honestly, the athletic events are a lot easier to find because of max preps, but if someone wants to know, you know, when are the band concerts, choir concerts, those kind of things are a lot harder to find because there's not a statewide organization of them.
And I will tell you, so if I'm a citizen that lives in Melbourne, and I want to possibly go to a football game, they don't know the average citizen to go to those things. And that's on us. We should, and nor should they have to try to say, well, there might be a website somewhere that I can go to and all that stuff. The idea would be, we figure this out, put it in a central location. It might not even be us, it might be a third party that does this because they want to advertise for district events, they work for it. Figure that out and then allow the people, part of our legacy clubs and all of that, to be able to do something. So that our community, that's really awesome to have all.
No, I think I was spoiled in my last school up north, it was on their homepage, it was today's events. Then if you clicked it, it went to the calendar of all of that school's events, and it was a Google calendar. But there was times I had, go to it, for certain things, but the public knew today's events, this week's events, and then if you wanted more, it would go to the big calendar of all the events of that school. So,
Could you talk to, the idea is sports is in progress, okay? All right, so the next one is new board member guy. Mr. Thomas and I, quasi are working on this. Just wanted to kind of overview where we are to see if there's anything that you feel needs to be added to it before we kind of bring it forward as a rough draft. So this is, just so you know, when new elected officials come in, we all live it. And then what happens is, which is what the heck is my role, what do I do, where do I go? And it's like a fireball, right? So what happens is that with all of these, we don't, there's never been a formalized document that says, here's what you should do. With that, every time somebody has it happen to them, we always say, oh, we need to put something together. So I'm gonna get it done. So these were some of the areas.
There was a binder once upon a time that, like, you didn't want to start from scratch.
Yeah, no.
The most helpful thing to me that we had to take out was the map of ESF, but then I lost mine, they didn't give me another one because it's a secure document. They, go to the red trash can, I'm like, just depends on which way you're coming.
Yeah,
It's okay, Lena's always good to walk me to wherever.
I just wander around aimlessly and then I figure it out, I'm like, oh, I'll just see where I'm.
If you look lost enough, somebody will tell you.
No, I just go in, there's different doors and I'll walk through, pass through, and it's the trash can thing, we could do a little better than that, basically, color the trash can.
So what I had was, hopefully, once we have these calendars set, an explanation of how the calendars work. Right? We also have what the laws that overview and govern us as board members. Just so you guys know, I asked MSBA if they actually had one of these documents that we could have for the board member, and then somehow I got elected to put it together for MSBA. So this is going to be FSBA.
Well, they probably have their training materials that they put together for the new board member academy, which that's a lot to.
Right, they just don't have a guide that says, here's basically every time you have a question, you can go here to try to figure out who to ask or where to go. So the laws overviewing, I think, is very instrumental for our new board members to understand the roles that we have based upon what we have, because there's some misconception over what you can and can't do as a board member. I think that always gets us in trouble. Desmond Blackburn will tell you that I was the biggest pain in the butt for 6 months of my school board career. Because
What?
Just the first.
What? I was like, you know we're gonna give you a hard time.
Yeah.
Come on.
Listen, but because you think I'm glad now.
We can't let that slide, come on.
Anyway, so the laws are overviewing the sunshine laws also, because I think that some of that is part of the conversation. The procurement laws, you're not allowed to talk to vendors, stuff like that. Board meeting review, how the process of the board will go, quite frankly, like not show up and be like, deer in headlights. And then process review for both how the board speaks to Dr. Rendell, how they speak to cabinet members, the requests, stuff like that. These are some of the main topics, and I did not have a map of ESF, but I have that down on my list.
I have something else, I don't know if it's on your list, but it's, there are certain things that come up that as a new board member, you don't know if it's something that all board members are going to. Is it like making it, for instance, an audit committee? Is that something that's a must attend, a recommended attend?
What is required?
Yeah, because some people, like from my situation, I have to a lot of times prioritize between day jobs and school board to see when, and if it's something that, I'm not saying you want to attend everything, but sometimes there are those things we have to prioritize, so knowing what is a must be events are good to know.
But I would say that is awesome, so I'll put that down. You have anything you want to do? We're gonna get a rough draft, and then you guys will be able to look at it, and you guys will be able to say, hey, I do or I do not like this, here's what we need to add, but I just wanted to make sure.
Shooting for August, because we might have people who are elected in August, that some people get the 3-month run up, and
Right.
some of us only got a 2-week run up.
Yeah.
So either way, if we have somebody who's elected in August, and at least by September, we can hand them because I know you guys got 3 months,
I was August.
y'all had time to
Go through all of it, yeah.
Right.
But I was laughing because my first board meeting, because I wasn't officially until November, right? Dr. Mullins was talking to me, I was like, well, print me off everything that's on my first board. The packet of paper was this thick, like it was that much stuff that I had to go through every contract. You can't look at it digitally because you didn't have access to it until you were officially, sworn in, but, yeah.
So I think, to that note, I think by the end of April, I'll bring this forward so that by the time we go away for the summer, we have a working document that is solid and true. The goal would be, yes, that if somebody is elected in August, that they're able to see kind of the processes and be ready, or if they're elected in November, that they kind of can review it. One of the other things I have on here is that they meet, it's really written small, that they meet with each one of us individually prior to like Christmas. And Paul and I have talked about this before. Paul can schedule a meeting where the two of us can come down, it can be sunshine, we can sit, and we just sit down and talk. Here's what I see, this is how things work, and I think that, beyond just a document, or inside of the meeting, is gonna go through.
Yeah, that's very good.
So,
Well, we did that all together meeting with John, where he could ask questions, because I think we even talked about retirement, insurance, and,
Yeah, it actually helped me.
that
We
would,
would have to do meetings anyways, because once they're the person, whether it's at the primary or the official sunshine attaches, I send you all a letter. Once you get elected, you're.
I think you called me on the night of my election to warn me about sunshine. I was like, hey, Paul, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, man, freaking out.
That sounds like Paul.
don't break the law.
I send that and say, hey, don't blow anybody else up, we don't got anything, then come on. But I also sent to, I can't remember if it was Amy or Pam, like a whole batch of all that legal stuff. So it might be in that binder or whatever, because they asked me for everything a new board member would need to know. So if you get a hold of that, I can update everything in there if I know what I send originally.
SBA has some too.
Yeah, but Pam had like a white binder. If I go digging through my stuff, it's probably in a pile right next to my bed.
So,
Find my printed copy.
So since we're kind of in that room real quick, since you're talking about it, we are in the process of, one of the problems we have is that all of our school board documents we have in a back room that is one of the craziest rooms I've ever seen at ESF. And inside of it, we have documents that actually go back to 1900. And so, like W.J. Creel was a school board member in like 1920. I read that, we read that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work to digitize all of our old documents before they become too old. Well, yeah, they're literally falling apart, but we we say this, right? In doing so, if we find that legal document, that packet that you're speaking to, I think we can bring that forward. My goal with this was to basically summarize in a like 5 to 10 page document, real quick, with reference to go deeper if they want to. That way they're not, like, because if I got a quite a binder this thick, I'd be like, all night constructing. Like I said,
Like links, so you're talking about like a digital document with links.
well, we can give
Just
some
FAQ for, for new board members.
And the reason,
Start with, the first thing they need to do is go back and watch the last like 2 or 3 board meetings. That's like a good starting point.
Well, and I always recommend that people go and watch the November meeting, because it's
That's,
such a different.
it is, well, it
You
is.
know, and
It's
honestly, my first couple of years, I went and bought, I would do that. I would go, because we only do it once a year. I would go back and watch the previous 3 or 4 years, just the first, 15 minutes to try to.
You actually told me that.
I did. I'm like, go
advice.
watch it so that you know what the heck we're about to do, because it's so awkward.
It is.
And the only way to tell you is for you just to go watch it yourself.
Yeah. So that's good advice.
So,
so I'm going through the history of, the school board also. So the goal would be to not only digitize all of our records, but then also have a list of school board members going back in what years, all the way to the inception of school board. I will tell you, we engaged with the supervisor of elections because that's an area that we can find. He gave me a link and Ms. Lena a link that goes to 1980, and then indicated that the rest of them are on microfiche. So he's going to start trying to organize his microfiche to get the old elections. I offered for our students at the Era High School to go over there and volunteer the time. I've got a host of kids that are going to be working on some of this stuff, so they could go over there and work with them. So a real cool project. But even he was saying this is a decent project because some of his microfiche is turning into vinegar, I think he said. So, so you might lose some stuff because you're only legally obligated to keep the records for so long. So I also called the head of the Brevard.
You're like ancestry. You're doing ancestry.
An old friend of mine, named Michael Bloomstra who headed the the Brevard County Historical Commission that is at the Cocoa Library, has now moved up to like number 3 in the public library system. I spoke to him. He's gonna work on getting us any documentation that we need from, because they have all of the old articles going back to the early 1800s inside there. And so he's gonna put it together. Now, we used to have a group called the Mosquito Beaters that I worked with on some of these projects. And when we made the call, I was laughing because he said, it's amazing because they're literally stopping their group this month. And so I told him, I said, well, maybe we need to tell them we got something else for them to work on. So just to give you guys, that was the historical project. So if you hear things like what's Matt Susan and some back room grabbing these things, know that that's the reason.
there's probably some historical society behind it that removes.
Those are the Brevard Historical Society.
That's who I'm talking
There's
about.
that.
There's the Florida Historical Society at the Omaha Library in City of Cocoa Village, or City of Cocoa Village. Then there's the county library that had at Cocoa that actually has all the old library, or all the old ones. We can focus on the one that's in the library of Cocoa, because the other ones won't for the state. My goal is to put together the history of the whole county and superintendent. Sorry, that's on.
Okay, I wanted to try to set another offsite in August and kind of formalize a 3 offsite meetings per year type of schedule. So that one we come in December, we talk about what all the new initiatives are, we talk to the new member, if that's it, whatever it is. We come back in March to say, here's where we are with those initiatives. And then once we start the school board meetings in August, that we would have a map. Completely flexible.
Why are we? So is this for new members or what?
No, just have 3 offsites to say, so the first one is in December this is what we're trying to do. The
Oh, okay.
second one is here's where we are. And then in August, when we're back, it's here's what we did. And I think that helps. I would like to just say, we can check with people your schedules, but I would like to formalize that into a process. That's all. You guys are good.
So 3 times a year.
Yep.
Plan.
And then once we get to 3 times, then we can formalize an agenda that we'll have for each one of those. But these are the core of what it is, so everybody knows we're coming back in March to review what we gave direction to in December. So,
I don't know if this is the time to say it, but is there gonna be a place on this agenda for like new initiatives we are working?
yeah, there's new businesses at the bottom, okay? We're depending on how much we get through.
Just because if that's getting ready to these meetings, I think that would be a working document then.
Because there's stuff we come up with.
Right.
It's more ones.
Right. Over the course of the year, there's new projects that come up that you might want to make the board aware of. It's just something that's,
Yeah.
you know.
I will tell you, Dr. Bell did not go over mine because we were still All right, the joint, so as you guys know, in the past, I have offered to try to set up some sort of joint city meeting, right? It didn't go over very well as far as because coordinating and what we should do and all that stuff. My vision would be this, is that we as a group or individually, we would go to our cities, have a formal meeting with the city councils of each one of the cities. In that meeting, we would bring our principals and stuff like that for an introduction. We think that there's a disconnect in some of our cities with some of the representatives at our schools. And it's not because of anybody being a certain way, but sometimes the city official represents certain schools and does not fit the individual. What I would like to do is, for instance, the city of Melbourne, John and I could go to it. We would sit down, bring our principals, just do an introduction. Here's what we're doing. Here's what's happening inside your schools. We would like you to come to Platinum's here because we have our calendar now. Is our calendar for you guys to come to. Here's like a ceremonial keys to our schools kind of thing. And just kind of a formal, not talking about any like we're gonna do this, this, or this. But I think it would be well received. I would like to do it with the whole board, but it may be more appropriate to have individuals go that represent the cities. That's it.
I would love it if it would be, I mean, if it would be us kind of invading their meetings, just for giving, them giving us like a 20-minute segment. If it could be like a cheerleading time of, here, let's introduce you, this is the, you know, for example, Melbourne, which also I have part of Melbourne too. You know, here's the principal of Melbourne High School, here's the principal of O'Galley High School, technically here's the principal of Pompey High School because it's in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Here's some accolades for the previous academic year, you know, and it bring all the way down to the elementary. Here's some events coming up we invite you to participate in, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, I think that would be fantastic.
So I think our biggest hurdle is gonna be our Robert meeting on Tuesdays, which is when we have ours, and so that's gonna be the struggle we're
But
gonna have to overcome.
we moved ours to the morning.
We
which
did
gives us-
one meeting a month, yeah, in the morning.
And I will tell you, when we did this formally, I went down because the board did not want to move forward with this. I went down and met with the city of Palm Bay over, I got pulled in, I'm very connected to the Haitian community in Palm Bay. So they wanted to have a meeting, right? So we officially had some collaborative meetings. So I brought some staff, we worked on after-school stuff and everything else, GED kind of stuff. But it is a great opportunity for us. And even if you as an individual, or like me and John, or Katie for the city of Melbourne, had to do it on an off cycle, I think that they would like to do that. I don't think they would once a year have an objection to having a meeting if it doesn't line up with us, to just sitting down for an hour and meeting all this. And I would feel very positive about it to the point where we could offer it to them, and if they don't take it, then that's one thing. But like, I think that they would take that opportunity. That's all. So if you guys are okay.
And if we know ahead of time,
Yeah.
if the work is gonna, in the future, is gonna continue to have alternating morning, evening, if we know ahead of time, we can work around if they're always, I mean, a lot of our cities only meet once a month, the
Yeah.
smaller ones, so. You know.
Yeah, how do you envision the smaller cities, like for instance, Melbourne Beach has Gemini Elementary? You still wanted,
I would go there and I would say, hey, here's Gemini Elementary School. Because even in those smaller ones, Melbourne Beach is funny because they do work real closely with them.
so let's say they already have a relationship.
I think it might be an opportunity for us to kind of go to a, maybe at that point, you could talk about some of the other stuff the district is doing too. I don't know particular to that. This is kind of the open starting this, so I think that would be the secondary conversation would be, hey, we'd be interested in talking about Gemini and some of the other things we're doing, because Gemini feeds into those other schools. So like you may have a referee kid that lives in Melbourne Beach that also goes to Melbourne. I think that's where his district is sent to. So you might want to have Chad Kirk there to say, hey, I'm where your kids go to high school, and then talk about those things. You know what I mean? They may not have such a direct connection. And then at that point, they may they say, hey, we would really like to do this. And that happens with the conversation.
Can I suggest too that even in the meantime, before we can set up, you know, because we wouldn't be able to do all of them in a year, but a couple a year, whatever, before we can do that, I mean, GCR could potentially help us set up asking some of our city councils, hey, would you give one of our board members or one of our staff members a longer than their 3 minute, whatever, just to present to you what's going on that are in the schools that are within the county, and we have appropriate staff to come with us, and if they'll give us, like we've done, we've let people come in and do presentations, proclamations, things like that.
You know, we also have the League of Cities that has their monthly meeting, and even if we got 15 minutes every meeting to present
Absolutely.
X number of schools.
So I used to do that, but it was not official. So every time they had me, you know, I'd call and be like, hey, this is what's happening. I would pop up and speak for 3 or 4 minutes because there was always something that they needed to know about. So I think if you guys are okay with this as a concept, I'll go back to GCR and say, okay, let's formalize this thing and bring it back to you guys. My goal would be to try to do it somewhere in, have the conversations and try to do it for the beginning of next year because there's not enough time to run it up. You know what I mean? Okay.
All right, just while you mentioned League of Cities, I did actually present state schools to League of Cities 2 years ago.
This would be a good year for you to get to see that again.
Yep. All right, so just real quick, policy reviews. So basically, we have, I wanted to put inside the calendar, every year we know when the legislative session is going to end. We know when all of those laws will be approved by the governor, DeSantis or not. But we need to formalize a system across the county, or across the year, that says, okay, during this time, we know that all of those are in. We'll need to bring forward any changes from the legislature for policy reviews. Does that make sense?
I think we already have it with the other process. They send us a packet pretty within a couple months, right?
This year, I'm hoping they'll have them by June, so we can maybe earlier than normal, but yeah, on a given year, it's usually late August, September.
And we already do this. It's not that I'm trying to recreate it. What I'm bringing it up here is that I would like to formally have it to where we know when that time period is on our calendars too. So that we know, like, this is when the old policies will come every year, meaning that we know that in July or June or whatever it is that we're gonna be doing. Because in some cases, instead of us bringing up, like, we wanna change some of our policies, we can just put it to that date so that we're not rolling with a bunch of policies throughout the year. Does that make sense?
I don't know, I hesitate to, it feels like kind of locking us into blocks, and I think flexibility, I mean,
We always have.
there's not been, really, to me, the bigger problem with policy review has been the time when we've had a whole bunch all at one time, as opposed to,
We've gone board for twice a year. NOLA is supposed to issue 2 updates a year. So
Right.
we've gone board for the twice a year for the big ones,
Right.
but we've had issues this year for the flexibility piece where we need to, or staff has a need to change the policy to put it on.
But for instance, twice a year, say it's, I don't know, when are those dates?
I think it's supposed to be after legislative session, so probably anywhere depending on the year,
June or July?
September is when you're gonna be there, so they'll start rolling in after staff gets the changes proposed, and ready to go, usually around October.
So we would know that in October, we're gonna be changing a lot of our policies coming out from the state. So for me, as a person that says, I've got some changes that I wanna make, I would lump them into that. Does that make sense? It's not saying that you have to. All it's, and you can't bring a policy up and change it. All it's saying is formalizing the actual process of how and when we actually bring up the majority of our policies.
There was a D-rank bill this year that would take us out of the ADA, which would have been nice, which shortens that process. I haven't tracked whether it's on the year.
So like we have existing policies that we need to review, we have member policies that come up, and then we have the new state laws that come up. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying that we are stuck to only doing these, but I would like to formalize the dates along the year, that when we would actually have some buckets to do that. So that if there's a law, for instance, the 365 policy, I'll talk about in a second, that I would like to, but it doesn't matter if we do it exactly this year, I can put it there so that we know that that's a time period we're gonna
strongly about the necessity for formalizing that.
And
Because
that makes
they
sense.
come when they come.
Ms. Campbell, that makes sense. The difference is, I have a very busy schedule, right? So what I can do is I can allocate on my calendar, if I know that all the policies are, the majority of them are coming out, I can allocate 3 days worth of calendar reviews so that I know that I can do that. Sometimes things come up in bulk, and I'm trying to scramble to review them in the evening. Does that make sense? I think John Garrett makes sense, right? Just Megan, stuff like that, so.
Yeah, I mean, I find, I'm one of those ones that likes policy reviews, so I'm someone who wants to issue a going through all the policies. Because we were required to do so by state statute, but I don't oppose having them set at a certain time. I mean, we're a policy making board, we should do policies pretty much on a routine basis, honestly.
As long as we're not limiting, I mean, because as things come up, we need to adjust, we usually have policy changes around the time that we're doing student code of conduct like we're doing now.
Yeah, but this wouldn't prevent us from bringing other policies at other times, if that's what you're concerned about, is making sure that.
I also don't want to lock it into exact time of year, because as Paul mentioned, when we have an early session like we did this year, Neola sends theirs out earlier, we have a late session, a super late session like that last year, then it comes out later, so we, maybe what would be helpful, especially if people know that we have busy schedules, is as soon as we get the Neola update, all of us getting those can say, hey, staff just got the Neola update, you guys can expect a batch of policies to hit in the next 2 months, right?
So, just for transparency, absolutely, this would not be something that we're gonna set and say in September every year, because it'll change.
Because sometimes we have to
But
be faster.
at the beginning of the year, Ms. Lena would come in and say, okay, you know, the legislative session is in March, let's reach out to Neola. Neola will tell us, we will be sending you your batch here, and then we can put that down on the calendar and just let us know. It's just kind of formalizing the process. Okay,
Can I say something?
yeah.
Paul, does Rhonda get that information already?
Neola doesn't have a deadline for it, like we contact them, like when are we gonna get them, and they'll say, well, we're working on now, we hope by, you know, this date, but they run over, sometimes they're quicker.
Can you loop me in when you do that? That way I can
But it's within 30 days.
be in the know.
Sometimes it's not, depends on the legislative session, like some years there's like a whole bunch that require massive changes, and they can't even get them all out quickly, so they'll do like half of them on an early batch, they'll issue a special report later on with the rest of them. So it just depends on the given year. Like this year, we're pretty light, so I would expect that we're gonna have from 30 to 60 days.
Usually the DOE has to do rulemaking, so that delays the process.
And if it's contingent, if the statute is, directing DOE to do something, you're on DOE schedule at that point, and sometimes they'll say by December, the rule needs to be out, and it'll be January before they actually get the rule.
What I'm hearing is that you, as a board member, would like as much time as possible before the first work session, which is really the one that we have the most ability to make changes. So you're wanting as much heads up, you know, and a lot of time work sessions, we don't get those agendas until, we don't get them the 2 weeks early because we're not board meetings. So, and I agree, especially if we're gonna have a big batch. Even though I don't have a full-time job outside of this, I want them as much as possible because that's a lot to read through. So, you know, I just,
And for me, Ms. Campbell, it wasn't so much just about what the state's bringing us, but formalizing the process of our policy review.
right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We want staff to give us those red line versions as soon as they possibly can give them to us and not 5 days, 7 days. You know, if they can give them a full 14 days before, or the superintendent
You
can,
can send those out as soon as they have them in.
yeah.
What I'm trying
Yeah,
to just say is that right now, during the formal policy review, we don't have specific, and this is what this is all about, is it's just organizing it, specific time that we actually would put in, that this is in July, or in June, or in May, we will review all of our policies for updates that we may need, and if any board member wishes to possibly update, that would be a good time.
You're talking about outside of Neola, because Neola's what we can't control.
Right. So the state has theirs, it's gonna be a moving target.
And within 2 years, you guys will be hitting that 5-year mark of all the ones we reviewed in 23. Then you'll need to start that 28, 29, 30, you know, all that. So that makes sense to do
It'll be a
that
lot
at a
faster
certain
than
time of the
the
year.
I think the first time was probably like, whoa,
Oh, we're
it's a
talking
lot
something
to
that's
do.
been reviewed for 30 years.
Yeah, 20 years, I mean, that's long.
So, one of the other things, so if we're good on that, we'll put that together and bring it back. one of the things I want to talk about in review to this, it's just, I'm gonna try to bring this up once I get a little bit more information. Currently, when we expel a student, they're only allowed to stay out for a full year, okay? And when that, in some instances, those are students that have done something so egregious that I feel that they should not be able to come back to our schools as far as a threat to our schools. And we've had situations where some of these students have gone to one school, done something, and then just popped up in another school, and there's nothing our school can do about it. So after 365 days, if there's been a threat to our schools, then the student can come back and go to another school. And what that does is it really, I understand that we want to try to give every child the opportunity, but for us, it disrupts schools, it puts security into a situation that's not there. So what I would like to do is have you guys just take a look at it, talk to Officer Klein, talk to Dr. Liddell, and possibly we petition the state, that this is not a school board, we cannot keep them out. We're gonna, for next year, that's one of the things I wanna try to do, but I want you guys to be, understandable.
It's actually the remainder of this year and all of next year.
So they still are allowed to come back and do it, they still are allowed.
Yeah, we're
And there are some
obligated
kids
to
that are just,
But obligated to educate could mean a different way, it could not.
The superintendent does have some authority if it's based on the best interest of the students and their safety, that he can place them in locations. So if we wanted to maintain like the progressive success pathway, it's like, hey, that's the best option for our students' safety and the best interest of that child, he can place them on a success pathway.
we can put them in there and then not have them.
You know, we have to educate them, so they have to get the education, so it's up to the superintendent to have that statutory authority to place them in that environment.
Because if they're expelled, if they're fully
If they're
expelled,
expelled without services.
right, then we're not providing anything, so at the end of that 365, plus every
Correct.
year, we have, well.
Yeah, there's actually a bill in the legislature right now that allows for extended.
Yeah, I was thinking that I'd seen that, it was in there last year, maybe it didn't make it through, because that is when he started on it.
Last year was about, like, you had to have a meeting, and they could have a hearing to, if we were gonna extend them for certain offenses.
Like
Yeah,
weapons.
weapons on campus, we could say, hey, the remainder of the year you brought the gun and all of the next wasn't enough, we're gonna extend it for another school year. But you had to offer them another hearing, and you
Okay,
had to justify why they needed to be expelled for that addition.
okay. But that one didn't pass.
It did,
It did, okay. So we do have that option
you have that offer,
currently. Okay, and the superintendent has the flexibility.
yeah, and he has placement.
I mean, this is gonna be in the most extreme. This is not just you got in a big fight and this is gonna be the most extreme, someone who caused serious, potential
Correct.
danger or to
Yeah.
emphasis. I mean, and most of the time, those people are going to be in jail.
Not always.
Not always.
And we are seeing some in the elementary school area right now that may be qualifying for this, and that makes it very difficult with the law enforcement. So, yeah, I would like to
Talk
see
about
something.
can of worms. No, I think
Yeah, we should not.
we stay with the statute.
All right, so new business, so the idea would be, guys, is that we go, so if we get to the new business,
What's your guy?
Yes.
they don't go to 11.
Oh, okay.
I'd like
I'm
to
gonna
talk.
get a break in a few
Yeah,
minutes.
what I was getting at is that we run through the new business real quick.
Oh, wait, what about the communications policy?
That was how we were talking about that. I was just getting them to, everybody to report to calendars. They are actually.
Oh, you just had a list of multiple.
Yeah, because
places.
if we enforce the calendar piece, and the communications will know what's going on. The idea when I wrote this was that we needed a communications policy, so communications knew when they were getting stuff, but if we're engaging on the calendar. All right, so new business, the only thing that I have is that I'd like to try to put together, we were with a group of, Brevard and I were with some faith-based leaders the other day. They were saying we would like to bring our churches forward to help support each one of the schools. And the idea is that they would meet with one of this is the same thing group that Loving and everybody does. They go in, meet with the principal and figure out what they need, right? The problem is that it's kind of a secondary support issue that the principals need to kind of figure out. What I'd like to do, and it's not for now, I'll just bring it back, is principals puts together if I had a series of volunteers with here's what we do plan, so that when they do get engaged with a school, they can say, here is something that I need, rather than having an official meeting where they have to sit down and figure it out and go through it, which is normally during the year. It's kind of a sunset. Maybe that's something we do with the SIP plan or something like that, we put together for volunteers, that's all.
Well, I know, I mean, I always, elementary is usually easier to find, most elementaries. I think some of our Title I schools, it's a little bit harder sometimes for them to find chaperones for things like that. But I know I just, was emailing with, an employee who's a friend, who was gonna have to take time off from the school where she teaches to go, because they couldn't find a volunteer to go to a choir thing. But I'm like, okay, there's gotta be people who are available, but if high school parents are more likely to work, less likely to be actively involved, that could be random high school support person, you know, who's gone through the background process or whatever, but they're on a call list. I think it needs to be both ways.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be, the school presents, here's our usual things that we could use volunteers for, but also the school can have a list of here are people who have already been background checked, and here's the call list. So if your choir teacher doesn't have enough chaperones, they can call Joe Blow, volunteer person who's already gone through the process, and this person knows them, reference, whatever, and hey, can you chaperone for this, because we need, and give someone else to go.
Or, even better, if they put down as part of their volunteer plan, we would like to have volunteers come read for the kids. We would like to have, and here's the dates that we would be doing something with them.
Right.
Or, we do have these field
Or
trips.
here's the training that you go through.
Right, and so,
We also need to put not just school-specific things, but if we can add to that list, like pre-populate those lists with things that are district-wide, like Take Stock in Children.
Yep.
If you would like, and not every school has Take Stock in Children students, but all of our high schools, but, and middle schools, but, if you're looking to go a further step, because then we're feeding people who might want a longer, more, because that's like a weekly commitment. We can feed more mentors. Take Stock would love to have extra mentors.
so I think this is great. My theory was bring it up as a concept, kick it back to you guys, work through what you think it should be. We meet with Dr. Bell, and then we can try to bring it forward by the end of the year, so that some of the principals for the beginning of next year, before they get engaged, they have the plan, if that's okay with you guys. The AI policy that we were talking about, that we had some conversation about earlier, I'd like to bring, I was kind of selected to be the mid-school district AI representative for like the polls, the Brevards, and all that stuff across the state of Florida. There's a policy that I've been putting together with some of the other AI groups. I'd like to try to get that. My concern is that this is a big deal, right? If we're going to get it in, say, to implementation before August of next year, we may have to kind of workshop this a little bit earlier, so that if there's any part of the trainings that we have over the summer, that we actually are ready to give that AI. So I would
That's
just,
what
yeah,
I've asked nothing to say.
maybe I don't know if, I'll work with Dr. Rendell, but I'd like to try to get it either March 31st or the first meeting in April, just to have a conversation about AI, and then have Dr. Rendell and staff put something together and formally bring it back to us. I'd like to try to move a little bit quicker on that one, because I'd like to have it ready, and I think we're gonna have to have training on our teachers for next year. Does that make sense? You guys do? That's all I have. Any new business, Brevard?
I've got a few things that are more just to make you guys aware, and I'd love to get your feedback on some of it.
Hang on, before we get too long, we really do need to. So is this gonna be like a 5-minute or
5
like a
minutes.
15-minute?
So,
Okay.
so just so you know, 10 minutes before Fleet was supposed to present, I figured we could get through it. Then, whether we started 11 or 11:15, our business is done, they present, right? So if we could take a couple minutes with Ms. Campbell, if we can move quickly through it, we're good.
I'll be real quick, if somebody wants to discuss something. But I've discussed this with Dr. Rendell, just making you guys aware about, we're exploring the idea of a 6th grade field trip, maybe a north-south type of thing, for the 6th graders to tour the CTE programs, and have a better idea of what's available to them. Second thing was a choice fair. This is just very exploratory, but I think Dr. Rendell and I had one conversation, but once again, be a north-south type thing, but have a central location where all parents can come and see what all of our schools have to offer.
And then do it virtually too, so that if somebody missed it, they can watch it recording.
Third thing was a marketing campaign, and that's just, I mentioned this, I think that Dr. Rendell and I may discuss it, maybe not, I'm not trying to surprise him, but the idea being, most private schools or charter schools do something, they hang their hat on something. And if you look at, so just from a purely marketing standpoint, I'd love for us to have whatever each elementary school does well, is be the school of, use, we have the West Farm School of Science, obviously, but without any additional academic standards, if Palm Bay Elementary is great in history, that's their forte, or music, they're the school of music. Port Malmar is good at what, right, so you're the school of, so it doesn't mean, it just provides, it highlights what they do exceptionally well.
It might be what their mission statement is, it might not be a specific thing, it might be something that they pride themselves as far as actionable. So,
But from a marketing standpoint, it's showing parents that we're not just a general public school. This is what we do. We're highlighting what we do well. So that's something I'm kind of pursuing. The fourth thing is along those lines. I noticed in just talking to some of the schools, they don't have great promotional videos about their school, and I know we're already tapped in or stretched in. So I was thought about trying to get with FIT and seeing about if they would have, their communications department, if they would have any interest in it as a project, coming into a Port Malwar Elementary and doing a promo video for them. And then maybe in coordination with their students, I don't know, but something along those lines, or Stone, or what have you.
and some of our communications kids, we have, I think, 5 communications programs throughout the district for right here in technical. Maybe we have them too. I love it.
One campus, came with this idea for one campus. I think actually it was Sue's idea. But in lieu of having an actual campus where everybody is in one place, making a stronger tie between the elementary schools, in my particular case, my elementary schools that feed into, say, Stone or Central, and then into those high schools, and then into FIT. But make it a more of a coordinated path, or at least more of a, where those schools have communicated. There's some kind of, whether it's academically, the curriculum is aligned, but just some way where when you're in an elementary school, you feel like you're part of the community, and you can see the impact.
Use it for the state in the middle there.
There you go. It could be, pick your college or pick your university, but the idea being is not just, so if you're at right now we lose kids because they're not, maybe not part of, they felt more like a part of a school community, they may not be so apt to go off to another school.
I think it's awesome, I know that, but getting the parents to understand those other schools before they just show up for parent-teacher conference. You know what I mean? This is where your kids go. I promise you, if you do that, more people will visit your school.
Keeping my 5 minutes. CTE competition, and Susan, I know you have an interest in that. We discussed it years ago, actually, before I ever got on the school board. And I'd love to coordinate with you and work with something, trying to get some of the building associations around the state to get behind some of their schools and see if we can create some kind of competition. Then last but not least, I just want to make you guys aware, this is not set in stone, but we've discussed it a couple times, and that is Deputy Mayor Jaffe, myself, we're talking about for Palm Bay, we're talking about hosting a town hall meeting, and then maybe inviting County Commissioner Atkinson, maybe the state rep, Wendy Miller, and Debbie Mayfield, we'll see how schedules align, but try to do it an all-inclusive town hall type of thing. Of course.
Yeah.
So that's all that would be on my list. I just want to kind of get you guys up to date.
So, yeah, we're proceeding, well, you don't need to praise this down.
Just not make sure I'm chair.
Well, I'm just saying at this point,
John gave us stuff, I gotta make sure it's done.
we know who to go to and talk about things, that all things I have on this now, get out of here for the rest of the time. Just kidding.
Leave that.
But we always have things on the burner, so there's lots of business going on here for that, so this, we need to tell you, okay, we have Tony.
No, you're gonna have to forgive me, I've been in the weather this week, so I do not have a list of anything.
So we'll take a break, it's, Mr. Chair.
Actually,
Oh, yeah.
again, well, I'm trying to be very quick.
It's not just me, the people of the world need to go to the restroom.
Me too, so, discussion today, so for the audience, it's just discussion today. We did not have any hurricane impact this year. So we did not have to close school or anything like that. Since we shortened the early release time on Fridays, we have a lot more instructional minutes. And, that's the thing that everybody thinks the school calendar is about days, it's not about days, it's about minutes. Instructional minutes. So we didn't lose any instructional minutes during hurricane season. We have 2 days of school after Memorial Day. We had days of school after Memorial Day last year. They were not very well attended. We have enough minutes in our calendar that we don't have to come to school those last 2 days. So I just need to know if the board's interested in me putting together a proposal that would eliminate those last 2 days from the school year.
I would totally be interested, but the unintended consequences is what I want us to check through, because schools have built their, not elementaries, but secondaries in particular, have built their schedules or calendars around finals week.
Sure.
And
Right.
the AP, IB testing, and sometimes we even have testing on the
Yeah, I can
So
guarantee
as
you,
long as
Yeah,
we're,
if you tell them we can point out.
I can guarantee you they'll adjust their calendar.
Okay.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, I mean,
A couple of things to think about, and so, a lot of our hourly employees, technically, we don't have school, they don't report. For example, cafeteria, transportation,
also aftercare.
just care. So we would still have them report to work on those 2 days, and we could do training and everything. For example, almost all of those, I think every one of those people still needs to have youth mental health first aid training, and it has to be updated after 3 years. So we could have them all either go to the training first out if they don't have it, or do their update training on those 2 days. I imagine that Mr. Thornton can find something for his employees to do those 2 days that would be productive. Same thing with transportation. Any of our hourly employees that typically when we don't have school, they don't report to work, we would have them report to work because we want them to get paid their full amount that they're expecting. And we would have things for them to do. So I can put together what that looks like and bring it to the board for approval.
Yeah, we need to move on that quick as possible though, because a lot of people plan their lives far in advance. But, yeah, I'm all for it as long as we,
Yeah, the drop in attendance for those days last year is significant, and so if we have the opportunity to, we don't ever want to say we don't want to have school, but we want the experience to be meaningful and productive. And those last 2 days last year, I don't know if they were meaningful and productive. The good news is, the good news, yes, the good news is, for next year, we finish before Memorial Day holiday, so. Right. Did I say Labor Day earlier? Say Memorial Day.
use them more.
Okay. All right, that was it, that was my one.
Okay, that's great. You come back next week. Looking forward to it.
We're gonna take a break, we'll be right back.
He's on nights, last week. It's going. So you're in charge of it?
No, I had it last week. Yeah.
And that's the Ryan, the official and everything else. All right.
You still got me.
Yeah, someone, Mr. Logan, on there right now? Yeah, I just told him we're going on break, we'll be right back.
We can find something that works for this.
There's some people over there, will you need to work with it while you're doing it, or? Or we set you up the inverter.
Suzanne's buying snacks for you guys, so
Oh,
I've
that's
been
awful
given
nice.
We're nice.
I got one.
I have no doubt.
Let's do,
All right.
close up what to check, make sure you can get up on the stage.
Okay.
Do that. Okay. Some people have peanut allergies. Yeah, LB on me, I got you. This is
It
exhausting.
looked like quite a good trip.
It was a great Yeah, fall, he was there, so. We're gonna leave like really on. Yeah, he does, I know.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Well, I can remember. Yeah, mine, I don't have any Yeah. Not really happy about that. Yeah, they're still gonna, but they, they've done enough. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know.
Unless they're going to.
Still, there's a.
Everybody can share.
Yeah, yeah, it's. What's his email?
Our meeting.
Mr. Thomas, it's HBCA, all our lowercase?
Yes, no space.
Everything okay now? Okay.
So, do whatever. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's going around here.
You want the lights off over there?
Are we all, you guys all feel comfortable? HDCA, yes, under HDCA. That's all of those. Very good. All right, guys, so everybody knows our new, medical, or healthcare consultants is Fleet, that's the Educators Health Trust for the superintendent. Mr. Jim Powell is gonna give a presentation today. He gave that presentation a couple days ago. I said to him, I said, we don't have a full board here, but moving forward with plan designs and everything, they're gonna bring us into an incredible place next year. But I did not want them to move forward with doing it all, we put our eyes on it, so I asked them to come back. And Mr. Powell, how long is the drive for you to come here?
3 hours.
Oh,
So
my
Mr.
goodness.
Powell went back on Wednesday and then came back specifically for you guys today. But he felt,
Mandated me.
yeah. But I felt like we needed to hear this and make sure that there was any questions. What they're gonna do is put all this together and then come back with a recommendation in about, shortly thereafter, but they did not want to start without, you guys putting your eyes on it. So if you have anything that you need to change or questions, ask them now, and then they're gonna get to work. So with that, Mr. Collins, thank you, the floor. Do you want us to turn the lights on you, or are you good with the way that is?
I'm good.
Okay.
Y'all are good.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we can see the screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so what we're looking at is the plan projections of expense. You can have a quick snapshot of this year, 2026, as well as 2027. If we make no changes to the plan and bump that up next to what we're recommending to Fleet. What we're going to be talking about is something that is really going to be the Fleet benchmark plan for improving the wellness of your employees. So that's the small words we put together. So the first thing we're looking at are, you have the two plans with two networks. And there's reasons that that's in place, but those reasons have changed since they were put in, and now we can consolidate one plan with a gold network. There won't be any loss of in-network providers, and just have one plan in January 27. So,
Mr. Powell, if I may, the architect behind the gold and silver plan was Mr. Langdor. Mr. Langdor used to work with us years ago. I met with Mr. Langdor about a year ago, I don't know, 2 years ago, when we started into this, we need to change our healthcare plan. Mr. Langdor did mention that if we still had the gold and silver plan and not consolidated it by now, that it was time to do so. So the architect of the plan mentioned that we may want to, that this would be the better plan to move to. So just so you know, and he missed Powell talking about, I want you guys to know that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, so simplification, one network makes it really easy, and no loss of providers, which is also a beautiful thing. Consolidating those two into one set of deductibles in a wellness structure. And the idea is that right now we have clinics where people can go for annual physicals, we have Cigna, they can go to their doctor, there's a lot of confusion about where do I go for my wellness, and then what happens once I've had my physical. We're gonna use that as the benchmark to start driving people to your clinics. So we want your employees to use the clinic almost like a primary care physician if they can. If they use it for preventive, it's free. If you decide to go the high deductible route with a health savings account, there would be a nominal charge, say $20 copay for higher treatments that they have done at the clinic, something that's not preventive, but minimal expense. So that's the focus of the plan. We've got some wellness metrics as well that we want people to go in annually. Part of this program would be they visit the clinic annually and they do a blood draw, and the nurse practitioner says, your values are great, I certain areas, that nurse practitioner will put them on a program and say, here's what I want you to do with nutrition and exercise, and I want to see you back 3 times this year. They put them on what we call a compliance program, but it actually gets them involved in their own health. And the motive for doing that is they can achieve, as you see here, a lower wellness deductible. So we found that this type of structure works very well with this kind of a model to get people into the clinic to improve their health, because that's the biggest expense of your plan are the claims. And the only way we can impact those, other than maybe a higher deductible like we're looking at here, is wellness and improving people's health.
If I may, Mr. Powell, one of the anomalies that if you look at this chart, you may not see, is that your gold and silver plan at the top, the wellness and non-wellness deductibles at the top, you miss the fact that if you scroll down to where the prescription drugs are at the bottom are also part of the deductibles. So if you add the deductibles together from the individual gold and silver and the family gold and silver, where we are going in the deductibles is actually less. It just combines them. The other anomaly that they're seeing is that we are basically being recommended a I care and I don't care plan. So if you care about your health and you want to go in, you want to use the clinics and you're going to go there for your care and be treated, you're going to be able to get all of those for free. So whereas, and that would be, you won't have any costs towards your deductible. And if you guys remember, our current healthcare clinics are, with Marathon, they have a limited amount of offerings that they have at the clinic. But you guys remember, I think some of you went to People One Health. People One Health offers almost 80 to 85% of the claims that you would normally incur in this situation. They are going to go out to a RFP for clinics, and the model that they're bringing is going to look more like People One Health. So the idea is that they're actually going to have a smaller deductible with this plan if you take the two and combine them. But then on top of that, you're utilizing the healthcare system, the significant savings to the individual is there.
I have to push back on that, and maybe as I'm here to hear you, but I have to push back on that because what I'm seeing, you talked about pharmacy deductibles, that's only if you get something besides like if I go get a generic drug, I'm paying $20, I'm not paying my deductible before I'm paying $20. So we have significantly, and I like the clinic model, but we've significantly increased the potential for the deductibles by making up to 4,000, 8,000, especially if you're talking about, if I'm reading this, I don't, no one's up ahead of you, but if I read this correctly, even regular doctor visits outside of the clinics is subject to the deductible. So I'm going, my family, and I'm not gonna be here, so I'm not me personally, but my family, this model, would have to hit the $8,000 deductible before co-insurance applies on this doctor visit.
That's one of the plan options. You see at the top, we snuck in really small up there, the little yellow thing that says board contributed HRA, HSAC. That's health reimbursement account or a health savings account. That's a decision point that we'll need to talk about in the high deductible structure. This is the one that you just talked about here, this one, let me talk over here. This plan right here with the deductible co-insurance. That's the biggest pain point of this plan, is the first time people go to CVS and they fill their script, it's an eye opener. So we try to take some of the pain out of that, frankly, and we put in the first $500 for single and $1,000 for family that they could use for that. The other point of education is the clinic. They can, if it's a generic, they can go to the clinic and get it free. I mean, so really, this high deductible, while you're right, I mean, this is, gets your attention, it really helps to focus. When we put this plan in at other places, the clinic utilization goes up from 30, 40%, which is what Brevard has now, to 70%.
And I have been in the past, another life, another job on a high deductible plan with an employer that actually put our entire, we can't do this, they put our entire deductible amount into an HSA.
Wow.
And so I would go to doctor's offices and they would say, oh my gosh,
You know how it works.
you're your bill, sorry, it's $112. I'm like, it's okay, I have this card, it's fine, it's the way the plan works, because even the providers were shocked by it. I think probably less now because there's more people going to that. But people would still, let me ask this question again, not trying to jump ahead of you, but, if the board does the seed plan for the HSA, employees would be able to add non-taxed, contributions to make their HSA higher, correct?
Yeah, if you go that route with the HSA, if you go with the health reimbursement account, it's, it's a different model, but, there are pluses and minuses to either one. So this model can flex either way.
Right.
And,
Thank you, and I'm sorry for missing the little tiny yellow line.
Well, it's tiny, that's why.
And this Campbell also, the formulary of RX pharmacy that's inside of the clinic, for the people ones is significantly higher, to anywhere to 50 to 60%.
Right.
So
Right.
that, all three again, so yeah, no, great point, I'm sorry, kind of, probably fine, sorry,
Discussion.
I'm kidding, it's just one more, but it's not cute, just like.
Yeah, I can't reach him from here.
I'll take care of it.
Well, and we'll look at the math of each of these, because each one has implications financially, but we kind of anticipated that question, so we thought, well, a middle step in between where we're at now and this third plan is the fourth, which you see brings back in the current copay structure for pharmacy. Costs a little bit more, as you guessed, but, that's kind of a middle ground that you could go to as well. Same metrics otherwise, but that plan, because it has copays, would not be a high deductible health plan, is qualified by the IRS, and would not qualify for the health savings account. So because of those copays, you would have to go to the health reimbursement account model. So that's why we've got both shown here. So they're each cool options, they're a little bit different from each other.
Still have, does that help, I'm not as familiar with the HRA, do they still have the ability to add their own funds?
No, this would just be the employer.
And we can't have an FSA with this on top of that?
You could.
You can.
Yeah, you could have a limited.
So you can still have an FSA. And
So
then
we can still do the FSA like we have now, which is all employee
Absolutely.
contribution.
On top of that, Ms. Campbell,
It's your top.
Yeah, if you get in with the HSA, you get into the limited FSA, that's what it says.
This top, could you explain the difference in HRA, SA, HSA when we're putting money in and they don't
Yes,
use it?
yeah, thank you, Ryan, I appreciate that. The money, the minute it hits the HSA account from the board, becomes the employees. So they own it, it's their account. So if they use it, great. If they don't use it, they can take it with them when they leave the school district. So there's that.
I literally have 76 cents left in an HSA from like 12 years ago.
Congrats. So, yeah, so it goes in, it becomes their money. Health reimbursement account is employer money. So if they don't use it, they lose it. So it's from a funding and budget commitment standpoint, it's a lot more onerous on the school board, frankly, to set up an HSA, because once you do that, it's gone for that year. But the pluses and minuses are sometimes people like to roll them over to the second year, so some of our school boards have said, well, we want people to accumulate some large balances, so we don't mind, but financially, it is more of a commitment to go the HSA route, certainly for the board. Thank you.
just so you guys know, Anthony was in attendance during the president, and he actually gave him compliments about the entire presentation. So he felt confident.
We had people, my first representative to SIAC was very much trying to get us to look at that, but it's such a big rip the Band-Aid moment. And if we don't have, and I don't know that we had at the time, if we don't have the board ability to put that good seed money, which for most people, $1,000 would be enough to cover your, assuming that, your well visits are still free, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're all covered.
Yeah, well,
Your normal, a kid has an ear infection or, maybe even a broken arm, most of the times, the $1,000 is gonna be enough to cover what you need. It's going to be our heavy users, who are probably already doing their deductibles every year anyway. But if we do have a model like People One, I don't know if we're gonna get them, but they had so much connected to that you could almost not go out of the People One model and not have to touch your deductible, correct? Depending on what we choose.
oh, yeah.
I asked, after we watched the presentation, I asked Mr. Powell to find, how many people in the event that this was set up would actually still be using money out of pocket, exactly to what you're saying.
Right.
How many people would be under 1,000 as a family in 500? Because there are a lot of families that never even utilize our healthcare system, and that's a large number. So they're gonna do that when they come back. The one thing you'll notice about their presentations is the transparency, is what Anthony even mentioned in the last meeting. Their numbers are 100% straight, and so when you see them, you'll say, you're not gonna see a 13% increase anymore, they'll tell you what it is. Sorry, Mr. Thomas.
That's a good segue to the next slide. Any other questions before we, and we can always come back.
So let me just get that straight in my
Not quick
mind.
enough, sorry.
If we do, my bad.
There you go.
So if we do the option on the right, it would definitely be an HRA,
Yes,
not an HSA. If we do the third column, we can do either one.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yep. All right, math. So this shows us projected total costs, and this is gross, for employee contributions of the current plan for 2026, 91.21 million. The funding rates, which are the board contribution and what the employees pay in, are projected to be 93 million. We'll see, it's early in the year, of course, we have 1 month of data so far, but we're projecting, close surplus of 1.8 million at the end of the year. The current employee deductions, because remember we have 2 different deductions that employees pay depending on which plan they're in, are 19 million. So the net board cost is 73.91 million. So what we've done in our projections, and status quo, all we've done is project claims at a 7.5% combined inflation rate. When medical claims and pharmacy claims combined, historically have gone up 7 to 8% a year. We're projecting that to continue. Fixed costs really aren't changed that much. There's a little bit of additional clinic costs because the clinics will have to add some people to handle all the physicals and everybody going to the clinic for those wellness functions. So that's already in this model. So status quo, if we renew the current plans, no changes, we don't do these new plans that we're talking about. The run rate on that is 96 million, and the budget funding 96 million. We just, for this example, we said, okay, the board's gonna fund what they're currently funding, so the full increase would go to the employees and their contributions. You don't have to do that, this is just how we modeled it. So, you see the employee deductions going up pretty substantially from 19 million to 22 million to keep the board flat for year over year. Again, don't have to do that, we can run all kinds of different models, so the board says, okay, we'll do this increment, and then we can model it back for the employees.
If you guys can, take a look at that percentage projected cost increase. 3.5 if we do nothing, negative 1.2, and then 1.1. Those are numbers that are incredible compared to other districts that are between 7 and 14% increases. There's nothing in place to try to steer them or control their loans. This is.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things happening here. You remember last time you saw me, we were talking about our pharmacy savings that we generated from Cigna in our negotiation for this year. For 26, we found 1.1 million, holding them accountable to the market using the power of fleet. So that's part of the reason you have a projected surplus this year. So to Matt's point, that helps as we go next year. If we end up where we think we will, that just takes kind of a bite out of some of the inflation that we normally have to fund. So
Employees will be paying $3 million, so that's.
yeah, so what's happening with these employee deductions? Well, what we did, and we'll show you the rates, is we just said, for our models, with either one of these 2 new plans, depending on which way you go, let's use the current silver plan employee contribution. They're lower. So that's what's going on here. Well, that's what's happening. So the employee contributions are lower in total than they are today. So it's a strong, that's a strong message as you're communicating, the whole plan. And you have now the contract effectuators coming in, they'll help communicate this message, get people to the plan. So it's pretty strong.
Do these models, or which of these models include a new clinic model, a new clinic?
The alts, the 2 on the right, yes. So those are that same ordering of, this third one you see over all high deductible health plan And
So
then
the status quo included if we stayed with Marathon, doing the same kind of.
same thing you're doing today, yes, the same wellness between Cigna and Merit, yeah, no changes, it's just, nothing changes. Should we look at employee rates? These get really small. Okay, so you read the bottom line. So the left side is current. So you see the number enrolled in each of the tiers, in gold and silver, the total monthly rates, what the employees pay. And what employees pay as a percentage of the total, which is interesting, they're paying 21%, that number there, 21% of the total. We're trying to get the fleet groups to be about 80-20, 80% board, 20% employees, so you're really close to that now. But you see, we just take those silver contributions this year and put them into next year, and that's the contribution for that particular plan, which is, this is the high deductible health plan. This is the least expensive of the two models that we're showing.
So if we have someone who's on gold, so I'm trying to reconcile, the reason why I said gold and silver was because the reason we're costing us so much more money, health trust is costing us more money.
Yeah.
The silver plan tends to be the people who are a little more disciplined, or don't need as much, right? If we lump it all together, then the savings that the gold people will realize would be money that they could spend on their deductible, which is gonna be higher.
Yeah, and, yeah, if you notice all of the employee contributions end up going down. But one of the anomalies that people don't understand is that they say that health first costs more. You see, if you talk to a lot of people, and you interview the people if they live north, and they say, why do you go to health first? Because health first has the cardiac arrangement, it has all of the things that high cost claimants would go to. So and we had health first testify to that the people that they see coming from the north, health first, that they have higher costs already. So it's just one of those things. Plus, it costs us more money to have a hospital in Melbourne than it does to have a hospital. That's the other thing. So, but all of them go there.
Yeah, so the board contribution, 71 goes to 75. So about 1.8% up.
That's including the HSA, right?
Yes.
That's right.
Yep, that's in there. Or HRA, depending on
Right.
which vehicle you
For the district, especially considering funding issues, I think HRA is, they use it or lose it type of model is probably best if there's a way to build in, you've done it at $1,000 per family,
Yes.
500 per.
Yeah.
The option you talked about, like letting it roll over one extra year, is that's an HRA, you see that?
I was referring mainly to an HSA, but you set the rules in Florida. And so you can let it roll, you can not, people generally don't, but you can.
If we don't let it roll, would that obviously lower the board costs for the seed for the following year?
Well, and letting it roll would maybe entice someone to delay, care for something, because then we got until next year, and we're gonna have those years.
Right, and you can use that on the stuff that your insurance plan, like, your kid gets braces, you could save up, braces cost
Right.
a lot of money.
A lot of money,
That was
Medical, not dental.
But on the HSA, you can use it for anything.
We said HR.
HSA.
Right, but on the HRA, you can, because I got my FSA.
So many acronyms flying around right now.
No, the health reimbursement account, we want to just tie to the medical pharmacy
Okay,
plan.
so only maybe from, so it is more than anything. Okay. Because that's what I think, I don't want people to save up, so I have.
Yeah,
because you're down the road, I can, pay for everybody's seats.
This is incredible, instead of having 7 to 8% increases, remember when Bumpkin came and said, you're gonna have a 15% increase, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, we get back down to 4 or 5. But people to get care for the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
Allowing
Well, the idea is
people-
wellness.
And
Yeah.
what we'll see is, in a couple of other details, okay, we have this wellness, non-wellness deductibles. All right, the first year, we're gonna start everybody off at a wellness deductible level. So we wanna give them a compliance period where they go into the clinic and they get set up on
Yeah.
a program to qualify for next year. So what they would be qualifying for is wellness or non-wellness for 2028. So I wanted
When
to
you say
clarify.
wellness or non-wellness, what does that mean? But I mean, all right, define what that is exactly.
You have lower and higher deductible.
Okay.
So you got 4,000 or 6,000.
Is this model including that option? Because that's gonna be a lot more expensive than I thought.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay,
Yeah, we assumed everybody's at the 4,000 deductible
okay.
for the first year.
Somebody, Lena, can you control that? Is that people in the waiting room?
Yeah, it's my finance guy, he's okay. We're gonna change the numbers, don't tell him. He'll be really upset.
I think the selling point for our members here is that this is for the 2027 plan year. These are the monthly contributions to our members. What they did is they took the silver plan's monthly contribution and copied it. So we have right around half of our employees are on gold, half of them on silver. So about for half of our employees, employee only 164, all the way down monthly contribution to 116.
Pretty big move.
It is, and that's almost 80% of what people have.
Look at the family, 816 going
Yeah.
to 6. You know, this is pretty good news.
It is.
And the silver isn't going up, you know, normally it's not this good news. But the movement of the deductible helps, and that's what it's attacking. And it, while it is a bit of a move, again, it focuses people back to the clinic, it's like, what are the options? And so, and we're most concerned usually about some of the lower paid employees, we really want them to use the clinic.
Right.
They can get a free generic, they can get a low cost.
I think the main message that needs to be really delivered to our staff is if we move this direction, how amazing these clinics are. We got to experience all the things in that clinic, you know, and that's just one version of it, I'm sure there's others. Depending on whoever the winning person is that gets that contract, but they need to understand that all the things that clinic can do. I think that's probably what was missed with the marathon thing. I don't know if that's utilized.
Right. They didn't have the ability to do that with the broad, so in this case, the way we understood the clinic model, this particular clinic model we looked at is, you go in and you got a messed up shoulder, and they've got to send you to physical therapy, it's still covered under that clinic
Yeah.
model,
Yeah.
because they're partnering with so you're not then paying physical therapy co-pays, but you went outside of that.
Yeah.
I think there's a point, like, and then because we have, assuming we would continue our contract with, what's our surgery, what is it? Lantern. So if that same person goes to physical therapy, doesn't get better, which they could do through Hinge Health or through a real person, they could go get their surgery through Surgery Plus, which is also free, and then refers it back to the clinic to do the follow-up stuff. We said, if they could do a lot, maybe not cancer, maybe not
Right.
some things, but they could do a lot and stay in that clinic model. So I think the success point from this hinges on having an amazing clinic model.
Right.
And I'm assuming you guys are still are getting there with that.
Yeah, we're all working together on that, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, the sleep was actually, weren't you guys vetting the clinics, the different clinic models for all the state, and you were kind of ranking them as?
Yeah. And we've got a
By
list of
country?
about
Okay.
20.
All right, I was gonna say, I remember you mentioning, or somebody mentioning that. They were,
But it's gonna have to be something like that, you know,
Yeah.
because most people don't hit those higher deductibles unless they
No.
have
something.
ongoing heart things or cancer or major surgery, maybe
Yeah.
baby. Which I don't know. 'Cause I think it has.
Go ahead. What else? Yeah.
I've had it.
So this will save the premium deductions, you know, they're saving money in their paychecks as opposed to having lower deductibles. So I'll always take that gamble. I'd rather have more money in my take-home pay with the possibility I might have to pay it.
Right.
So that's kind of the thought process.
Well, and I do feel like because of the changes we've made, and we went from like you just have to do it, because now you have to do a full annual exam, not
Right.
just biometrics. I think we've kind of built people up to that expectation of you're gonna have to take charge of your wellness, and if you wanna save money, do things, you know, that you need to do.
Yeah, this is the, thank you for the segue, that's the wellness, this is what it looks like. Well, you go in for your annual clinic visit, you start up here, clinic visit, completion of the health risk appraisal with a nurse practitioner, and they look at that, and then they set you up on your compliance program. Throughout the compliance period, if you can maintain blood pressure below the 130, you get a point. The idea is here is we want 7 out of 10 points out of this scale. If you're a non-tobacco user, and there'll be a tobacco test at the clinic. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, now it's, I think the honor system, somebody
I
told
think
me.
the issue.
You
There was a, you won't
never
believe,
used tobacco.
we debated that a really long time,
Well,
about whether we're gonna do like
And
saliva tests.
there can be some noise around this, so make a light out of it. But it's
Well,
worth,
I mean, tell the truth, or you
it's
just
worth,
like,
right, it's worth 3 points.
And why are you making me pay for you?
Triglycerides, waist circumference, those are all the things that really, as we look at diabetes and even some cancers, these are the things that really are so important to catch early. So 7 to 10, you get the lower deductible, 0 to 6, you get the higher deductible plan.
Okay, so the wellness, non-wellness
So
is really.
that's how you get there.
Not
based
just
on
not
how
check
healthy
the
you
box.
are.
Yeah, it's not just having a physical. See, the problem with having a physical is great, I love it, but then what? What do we do?
Yeah.
You know, how do we improve your health? Well, this is where the nurse coach comes in and puts you on that path.
Yeah,
And so what's exciting is we see the reports every month that come in from the clinic, and we see people's health risks going down.
that's
Which is,
beautiful.
yeah, if we can prevent them from going up, we've really been successful. So
Yeah.
if we can see them coming down, that'll impact your ultimate 5-10-year cost, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
And you did 5 points right off the bat for not seeing this book or
Yeah, you're almost there.
yeah, you're almost at the lower deductible.
Yeah. And for people that can't do these things, we make reasonable accommodations. There's coaching, there's other things that people can do that they can't, because that's what the law says we have to do. So it's a legit wellness program. And then the tobacco, I think, is the last slide. Just that little note.
This makes more sense as to why we're giving them a whole year to get into compliance, because that'd be hard to do, we just have August to December.
Yeah, we were talking to Ryan about how quickly we could ramp this up and do it, it's just like, no, we don't, we just want to give them the benefit of the doubt and then you really get them on the right path.
So look at that, $50 per pay period for tax surcharge.
Yeah.
Isn't it $250 right now?
Not per pay.
Oh, not for
That's the one time.
Yeah, it's just an idea.
There's no testing, there's, just taking their word for it. Now there's gonna be testing.
Look, if you, I mean, to be honest with you, we know that health effects of the tobacco. If you're gonna continue to do it, then I'm not.
I don't have a problem with that, and I think we have, again, something that we kind of slowly, we had this discussion a few years ago with SIAC, I was like, woo, so, but I think if you're getting
I think
there,
you're gonna get some pushback on this.
we're getting there.
Yeah, this gets people in to do the test. You kind of play with this long enough and you come up with the right math.
Yeah,
People are motivated, unfortunately, by something maybe painful, so they're looking at $100 a month. Yeah.
If people use like patches and things like that, does it get false positives or whatever, or?
They can work around that. Yeah, because then they're hopefully on a cessation program. Why? So then, if they're on a cessation program and they're successful, then they get this, they actually get the money refunded. So once they go off nicotine, this $100 that they paid a month, it's actually refunded.
oh,
And
good.
we hope that happens, we hope people
Yeah.
are able to do it.
It's refunded, say that again, they go off of it, then it's,
Yeah, that's refunded.
so how would they have to just go get tested again?
Yeah,
And then,
and prove it.
when you say refunded, you mean we're gonna give them back the money that we've already collected, or we're going to stop collecting money this
The
year?
money you've already collected. Yeah, it's annoying.
I was gonna say, from what time period, how would you tell?
When
Like,
you started, yeah, when you
That's what we do
started.
now, right?
Yeah.
We do that now.
oh, wow, all right.
That's the administration of this program.
Well, like, how do you prove when they stop smoking? So what if they're like, we smoked for 6 months of the year, I quit, yay, I passed, now I want the 6 months, proving that.
These tests are pretty good.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
good question. And that's it.
So all we need is to make sure that we have good with it, moving forward. And, I'll just be honest with you. We know, Ms. Campbell knows, we've been trying to get to this, but we've been told different things in different consultants are on. And I'm real happy with those percentages there, but I've never had them before in the school district.
get the base models right, then that's what makes it work.
Well, I do agree, I think that the success of this really hinges on that clinic model being a solid clinic model that's, I mean, we gotta pump that out to our employees like crazy and make sure that they understand.
The new design should be ready by
1/1/27, how is it gonna get, well, I'm just asking the question of.
Well, they said they told us they only needed 3 or 4 months,
BPS existing.
Exists,
right, and then they can build from
that
there.
they were gonna have to build on if it was people once, remember, we didn't have, what do we have?
Well, people want, if they were selected as new 9 months, and they do it in 6 months.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's all of them.
We definitely need
I think some people are gonna have some heartburn over those reductions.
I need to remind the board it's a mandatory bargaining thing as well, so I.
Right, but it sounds like Anthony's already like,
He hasn't seen this model yet.
Hey, Dick saw it. Hey, Dick saw that on Wednesday.
He wasn't in that.
He wasn't in that.
That's right.
He saw the financials.
okay, thank you, Mr. Powell, for
Well,
trying to
if
put
the gold
down.
people get those premiums.
And for the work that Fleet's doing, you guys are doing an amazing job. I jokingly say you're probably not loved amongst the insurance provider world, because you come in and kind of really, you know, what a shame, that's right, you know, they did the right thing, and that's what your problem, so, there you go. Well, I'm sorry for that.
That's how we feel about it.
Yeah. That's good. So, but thank you for the work you're doing.
All right, guys, so, as part of this, John had said that we could all go use that, frigates, is that it? So I'm heading over there.
And he's paying.
Yeah.
Now, we have to report that as a gift.
Yeah, I did not say that.
$50, right?
Thank you, guys, I'm heading over there, but I guess, thank you so much, I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Are we adjourned? Really nice, like riverside.
Yep, yeah, that's it.
Roger that down.
Yeah. I think.
He's right by it.
I'll go have a conversation with him.
My wife's.
But yeah.
It used to be something else, and then.